In this world, players are immediately placed on the side of the light faction as soon as they create a character. But by chance, the protagonist discovers that by joining the dark faction, he can surpass everyone. After that, he becomes a villain against all other players to reach the top. When the hero starts the game, an introductory scene begins with the appearance of the dragon god. However, Reagan decides to skip the introduction and jump right into the game and gain an advantage. His jump down is interrupted by a question from the system, asking if he needs initial guidance. The guy was too reckless to think about it beforehand and hastily agrees. The hero's appearance was transferred from reality, but he is still asked to enter a name. He manages to suggest a name, Winter River. But the next moment he falls to the ground. He lands right on the newbie village square, scaring the villagers. When the dust clears, the hero finds himself in tattered clothes, but his wounds are instantly healed. Looking around, Reagan notices a sign above the old man. It's time for the first task. The hero awkwardly approaches the old man and begins a dialogue, offering help, but the old man refuses. According to him, the young man is unworthy of the mission he offers. Reagan responds by asking him not to underestimate himself, glaring menacingly at the old man. Tired of the guy's rudeness, the man points to the slugs at the entrance to the village and suggests that Reagan kill one. The hero accepts his challenge and sullenly approaches one of the weakest mobs. The newcomer's inventory turns out to be only a simple stick, but Reagan readily takes it out. His blow, unfortunately, does very little damage to the slug. However, his attack angers the creature and the slime charges forward, dealing 10 times more damage. Reagan realizes that he has no way to fight the creature now and tactically retreats to the village. Once safe, he is surprised to learn how low his numbers are. Nearby, the guy notices a soldier from the newbie village who is much higher level than he is. Reagan approaches the man in a friendly manner, but he refuses to answer questions. According to him, a newcomer must first prove his strength, but he can help for 10 gold. The hero offers the soldier 1 gold coin, otherwise he threatens to go to someone else. The soldier thinks, because he himself earns only 50 coins a month, 100 of which are worth 1 gold coin. Reagan is about to leave when a soldier stops him and agrees to help. With the help of the man, the hero gains the ability to wield a sword and a basic double strike. After this, the soldier persistently asks for his payment because he has already spent his energy. Reagan replies that he has just arrived and can only draw up a contract for his debt. The knight, angry at the deception, agrees to a contract that gives Reagan a week to repay the debt. The hero responds by offering to add another coin to the debt so that the soldier will give him his things. After much persuasion, everything begins to go as Reagan had planned. Although he received items of the lowest value, they will definitely help him get off to a good start. While the hero is reasoning, dozens of lights light up around him. The next moment, a bunch of newbies appear in the square of the newbie village. Reagan decides to hurry up and start implementing his plans as soon as possible. Now armed with a sword, he goes out to the slugs. Now his blow deals more than 20 units of damage. And thanks to the soldier's armor, the damage from the slugs was significantly reduced. Activating double strike, he finishes off the slug, completing the first task. Feeling his power over the slugs, the hero begins to commit genocide against them. Soon he even reaches the 2nd level, increasing his ability and health indicators. So 2 hours pass, and by sunset, all the players are eager to see how invincible the slimes are. Meanwhile, Reagan returns to the village with a bag filled with trust hoo. He throws it at the old man's feet and slime hearts spill out of the bag. The hero states that this task was too easy for him and demands a real test. In response, the old man asks him to kill 10 demonic gods. A system window appears in front of Reagan and he realizes that he has only a week to complete the task. Despite the possible punishment for failure of the task and the amount of a huge sum, the hero agrees. But he also convinces the old man to give him one of the rewards before the task, a special scroll, because the task is very difficult. He calls the hero smart and happily gives him the scroll. In fact, the greedy old man is hoping that Reagan will lose and that he already has 10,000 coins in his pocket. The scroll, it turns out, is a one-time use with a fire effect on enemies within a radius of 200 meters. After this, the hero goes to raise his level by destroying wolves. As a reward, he is given only a little experience and 3 bronze coins. Reagan understands that, at the rate he's developing, he will not have any success. He even plans to abandon the account, but the system immediately warns him that the debt will remain on it in the real world. Meanwhile, the rest of the wolves come running to his indignant cry. Reagan decides that he should lay low and gain experience more wisely. After some time, he finds a lone wolf separated from the main pack. 2 hours of monotonous killing of wolves one after another pass. Reagan reaches level 7 and even acquires the bracers that drop from one of the wolves. Suddenly, an unusual figure nearby catches his attention. This stranger turns out to be the Demon Wolf King, a bronze difficulty boss. Reagan realizes with horror that his strength is barely enough to penetrate the monster's defenses. But he remembers that he should take advantage of the situation before other players get here and rushes towards the demon. Thanks to its sense of smell, the monster reacts to approaching instantly. He lunges towards Reagan, but the hero dodges the sharp claws in time. Unfortunately, the second blow still hits the guy, and the monster takes away as many as 200 health points from him. During the attack, the hero still deals damage to the monster, but it turns out to be too insignificant. The demon rushes into attack again, and along with him the wolf passing by. The beast bites into Reagan's arm, taking away a lot of his health. The hero decides to take advantage of the wolf that has entered the battle and tears it from his hand. Instead, he holds the wolf in front of him with one hand and approaches the demon. The monster is confused that its fellow is being used as a living shield and does not attack. Reagan decides to take advantage of this and begins to deliver basic blows to the huge wolf. Unable to strike back, the demon can only retreat. After a few hours, the monster has only half its health remaining. But suddenly the demon is covered in a red aura. The system reports that the monster has used its unique ability and has become stronger. Reagan realizes that the process of taking down the boss has just become even more difficult than it was before. The demon rushes forward and deals triple damage to the wolf in the boy's hands. The hero is now left without protection, but the monster is also immobilized due to the murder of its fellow. Reagan realizes that the confusion will not last forever and decides to hit the demon as many times as possible. After 5 seconds, the wolf comes out of the trance and deals 300 units of damage to the hero. The guy is left with only 100 units of health and decides to run away from the fight. As expected, the demon rushes after him with incredible speed. Reagan can only dodge, because one blow from the monster is enough to kill him. After landing rare basic attacks and dodging for 5 hours, he finally finishes off the boss. As a reward for this, the hero receives 3 levels and 500 units of reputation. He becomes the first player to kill a bronze-level boss, and the system suggests telling everyone about it. The newcomers to the village, who are still struggling with slugs, are shocked by this news. At the same second, hundreds of players start sending the hero friend invitations. Having blocked any opportunity to send him requests, Reagan decides to see what the boss has dropped. But suddenly an irritated voice asks who killed his puppet. A menacing-looking necromancer approaches the hero. Reagan realizes that he has finally met a truly threatening boss. The necromancer approaches him and allows the hero to say the last word before he kills him. The guy throws up his hands and asks the person with the gold level of powers to just show him his questionnaire. For some reason, this request makes the necromancer angry, and he begins casting a spell. Suddenly, Reagan snatches the scroll that the old man from the village gave him. He steps forward menacingly and orders the necromancer to hand over all the treasures and show the information. Necromancer Daniel tries to bluff that he has nothing to fear and tells Reagan to take a chance. He responds with a bluff in response, unrolling the scroll he had already used earlier. The magician understands that he is risking more here than the hero because he is not in the best shape. Finally, he asks Reagan to slow down and explain what he's even trying to achieve. The guy repeats that he is only interested in the necromancer's things, and then he will simply go away. Daniel replies that he cannot give him something without receiving something in return because of the rules of this world. Instead, he offers to take Reagan as an apprentice and teach him the Dark Faction's sword techniques. A notification pops up in front of the hero that the necromancer is inviting him to actually join the faction. Daniel also promises that he is not hiding any deception and will really become his teacher. Moreover, he promises that Reagan will become the Dark Swordsman who has great potential. Without further thought, the hero agrees to the necromancer's offer. The next moment, Reagan's body begins to change as he embraces his new role. As a reward, he also receives reputation and a rare artifact, the Ring of the Dead Spirit. The necromancer assures him that the appearance will change back when Reagan becomes strong enough. But for now, in order not to provoke anyone, he uses magic to return him to his human form. However, this does not improve Reagan's mood. The hero is worried that he will not reach the desired level of power because his teacher is only gold level. The necromancer is irritated by this attitude. But despite this, he promises that if Reagan becomes stronger than him, the demon god will become his teacher. He also gives him a quest to prove that he is worthy of being his disciple. Reagan will have to kill 100 adventurers to do this, and he is not sure he is capable of it. The necromancer refuses to listen to his excuses and leaves to recuperate. He adds with a smile that Reagan will not be resurrected now, since he has sworn an oath to the enemies of darkness. Along with this, he received the protection of the demon god, whose true power he would only understand after completing the task. Left alone, Reagan decides to try out his new skill on the wolves that roam nearby. Thanks to his new role, his punches are now stronger and faster. He also leaves the battle with a helmet made of wolfskin. Reagan decides that he needs to clear out his inventory and to do so, he needs to go to the newcomer village. But suddenly he is pushed away by another player. He and his team surround the only wolf to gain experience. One of them looms over the hero menacingly and orders him not to interfere. Reagan reminds them that he came here first, and they have no right to turn away lone adventurers. But the bandits don't want to hear about it, raising the point of their weapons in his direction. The hero decides that he cannot stand aside and watch people like him being oppressed. He starts recording the screen, and the bandits, having noticed this, rush to attack. Their weak attacks only deal 2 damage to Reagan. But just one of his attacks in response deals over 1,000 points of damage, killing the attackers. The hero himself is shocked by the power that the Dark Faction has given him, that he can kill players for experience. His cry attracted the attention of other bandits, who immediately rushed to avenge their comrades. Reagan meets them with sword blows without an ounce of fear or regret. In his eyes, they were now bags of experience. Thus, the hero begins killing hundreds of players, of which there are about 80 left to kill. Reagan warns them not to blame him for their deaths, as they attacked him first, ending the recording. After this unpleasant encounter, he decides to return to the village to sell weapons and armor. The hero announces loudly that he sells wolfskin armor and only for real money. But other players are more interested in someone already selling armor when they can't kill the slime. Right there, Reagan is surrounded by players ready to buy things for hundreds and thousands. One is even ready to pay 10,000 and invites the hero to his guild. The guy decides to refuse. He does not want to join a light guild, being a warrior of darkness. However, this does not stop him from having business with the guild and selling them items in the future. After finishing the gaming session, Reagan removes his diving helmet. Somehow he managed to sell the weak armor and weapons for 40,000. Now he decides to publish a video he shot with a bunch of bandits. The next day, Reagan is found by a whole squad of players ready to avenge the honor of their guild. The hero happily takes out his sword, ready to gain a lot of experience points. With light blows and a smile, he cuts down attackers left and right. Some are afraid to approach, despite the promised reward from the assembly of heroes. Their captain tries to convince his men, because they will receive a reward for the killed. Reagan, meanwhile, is calling everyone to come to him so that they can try to defeat him. All those who dare will meet the same fate as those who came before. Their blows barely register due to the minor damage, and Reagan has no problem fighting back. After 20 minutes, 100 players still manage to reduce his health to a significant level. But unexpectedly for everyone, the hero opens a new level and restores his health. But even in this situation, the leader of the attackers orders to continue attacking him. The players decide that Reagan used some trick to level up and rush to attack. Within 15 minutes, he reaches the goal of his mission, killing 100 players. But despite the completed mission, he decides not to miss the opportunity to continue gaining experience. After a few minutes of active combat, the players are again preparing to finish him off. But this time he simply increases his level to 12. Attackers don't understand how a player can level up by killing other players. They turn to their leader, who looks stunned. The man doesn't understand where Reagan got such strength from, because he only defeated the bronze boss. Unable to find a way out of the situation, he orders his soldiers to retreat. The guy picks up their discarded weapons and laughs at them for forgetting to take his sword. Reagan only has time to wonder why his evil level hasn't increased when he receives a notification from the system. It turns out that the necromancer is in danger, and the hero will face a serious penalty in the event of his death. Reagan has no choice but to run to his aid. Meanwhile, Daniel finds himself pinned against a wall by enemies. The old man grins, anticipating the reward for the head of the dark mage in his faction. The verbal altercation between the two magicians is interrupted by the rustling of leaves in the bushes. The next moment, Reagan bursts out of them with his sword at the ready. Both the old man and the hero clearly did not expect to meet each other here. Suddenly, the old man puts on a threatening expression and orders Reagan to get out. His instincts also do not miss the powerful dark aura that the guy exudes. A plan immediately forms in his head. Kill the necromancer and bring Reagan to the church to gain respect. Daniel admits that before the hero appeared, his chances of survival were negligible, but now everything is different. He decides to activate the teleportation spell, but to do this, Reagan will have to distract the old man. Unexpectedly for him, the hero extends his hand and replies that he will not lift a finger without a task and a reward. After fulfilling the condition, Reagan stands before the necromancer and asks him to trust him. The old man, meanwhile, is getting angry because his enemies are freely discussing their plans right in front of him. Reagan takes out a scroll with a curse that he found in the village. He activates the spell by tearing its fabric and releasing powerful energy. The next moment, the portal is activated, and the necromancer and Reagan are transported to another place. Suddenly, everyone receives a notification about the hero's connection with the Dark Faction and a reward for his murder. Daniel and Reagan emerge from the portal already on the plains of Gales. Even the hero at this moment receives a notification about the hunt for him, just like all the players. Having assessed the size of the reward, he understands that danger now awaits him at every step. Also, because he left the village, he is now being persecuted by the villagers. Also, the task of killing the demon gods is considered failed, for which a fine is imposed. Enraged, he grabs the necromancer by the lapels and demands a reward for his help. The system congratulates the hero on completing the task and gives him a lot of experience and a rare talent, an evil march. Immediately his level rises to 14 thanks to the reward. Although the special talent does not sound particularly dangerous, in reality, such an attack will definitely damage the enemy's self-esteem. The necromancer says that he found this skill in an ancient burial, but he couldn't use it himself because of his class. He advises the student to begin training while leading him to a place where the demon gods rule. After an hour of wandering, they find themselves in a stone wasteland. The necromancer decides to rest under the slope of a cliff. To save Reagan time, he hands him a bottle of potion and advises him to look for local monsters. After some time, he finds a group of demonic lizards. To his horror, they turn out to be 3 times stronger than the wolf demon he fought. Reagan decides to test his strength and rushes into the attack. Evil March surprisingly does a decent amount of damage to the lizard. The hero delivers several more impressive blows with his sword. The lizard also decides to attack and takes away as many as 400 units of health. With the beast close enough, Reagan has the opportunity to deliver the decisive blow. After defeating the first lizard, the rest start to get angry and crawl towards the hero together. Fighting off the animals, he decides to retreat in order to increase the distance between himself and them. This tactic proves successful, and within 20 minutes, all the lizards are defeated. Suddenly, the hero receives a call from the leader of the guild, with whom he has an agreement to sell weapons. As Reagan examines his catch, the man explains how everyone is now talking about the hunt for him. Suddenly, the hero receives an offer to sell his character. He understands that this is a staged murder, but he is afraid that his account will be blocked. Reagan is about to refuse when the guild leader offers him 20 million as a reward for this. The hero decides that this amount would be enough for a comfortable life, but his role is worth much more. He decides that he will not sell himself and answers this to the guild leader. But before cutting off contact, Reagan sells him a few more pieces of armor. They agree that one of the guild's people will come to pick up the things. Meanwhile, the hero will decide to continue killing lizards to gain experience and complete the task. After a couple of kills, his body suddenly becomes covered in energy. The system reports that he has reached the level necessary to understand his talent. Thanks to this, he will be able to fully restore his health in less than 4 minutes. After an hour of effort, Reagan finishes off the first 100 lizards out of the 5 needed. Finally, one of the living creatures drops some armor, bronze-level boots. The hero decides to continue developing, but suddenly he is knocked down by the lizard's tail. This lizard turns out to be the Demon Lizard King. Reagan decides that it won't cost him much effort to defeat another bronze boss and attacks. His first attack is an evil march, which causes the beast to freeze for a split second. But suddenly, strange streams of energy rise through Reagan's body. The system informs him that due to contact with the lizard's skin, he is poisoned and will lose health for 10 seconds. It is now that the hero decides to use the elixir that Daniel gave him. Having restored his health, he rushes into attack again. Now he tries to keep his distance from the lizard, but she doesn't forget to use her long tail to attack him from a distance. To stop the monster from attacking with its tail, Reagan simply cuts it off. After just a couple of minutes, he finishes off the monster with his sword. Unlike weaker monsters, this boss dropped a lot of silver coins. But unexpectedly, the boss also drops a breastplate and a staff, both bronze level. Unfortunately, the hero cannot use the armor yet due to a level limitation. He decides to contact the head of the guild and offer him his loot. So Reagan made 100,000 in just a couple of days and can't wait for more opportunities. But for now, there are still lizards waiting for him that need to be killed. After a couple of hours, Reagan wearily removes his diving helmet. Checking his phone, he notices a message from a friend inviting him to go for a walk. Jay, a friend from college, happily hugs Reagan, happy to see him again. Unexpectedly for the hero, Jay offers him an interesting job, a professional player. It turns out that the friend works for a company that will soon make a breakthrough in the game Infinity. That's why he suggests that Reagan introduce him to his superiors. But Reagan firmly refuses, explaining that he would prefer to work alone. Jay realizes that his friend has already started the game, and he can no longer hide it. The hero explains that there are a whole bunch of possibilities in Infinity, and therefore he simply could not pass by. But when a friend asks him for his nickname, he decides to keep it a secret. Now everyone is hunting Reagan, and he better not reveal his name to everyone who wants to know. However, Jay decides to tell him about a secret space that opens after a certain level. He doesn't know when it will happen, but the event will be linked to the talent of each individual player. The next day, the necromancer is surprised to see his apprentice again. He did not expect Reagan to complete the task so quickly. The hero, tired of the endless monotonous murders, asked the teacher to finally give him a reward. The next moment, the system notifies him of an increase in experience and the acquisition of a silver-level ring. This artifact allows you to more efficiently transport and store items and armor. Taking the opportunity, Reagan asked Daniel about the adventurer's talents. The necromancer explains that talent is acquired by passing a special test. After completing the test, the player will have 1 hour to decide which talent he wants. Unfortunately, it usually contains low-ranking talents that are of no value. But there is also a man who has a special talent for swordsmanship, which increases the blow by 80%. This talent is of a special rank and level that no one else has except that swordsman. But at the moment, the necromancer advises the student not to think about it because he has a death march. After this, Daniel begins to concentrate energy around himself. He asks Reagan not to move as it is time to grant him the protection of the demon god. Daniel points his staff at the student and begins to recite a prayer to the god of the dark faction. The hero's body is covered with dark energy, and the system informs him of the possibility of now acquiring titles. The first title he is awarded is Fallen, for betraying the light faction. Now Reagan himself becomes a bronze-level boss, and his health will always be doubled. The necromancer sees Reagan's satisfied face and congratulates him. Meanwhile, traces of dark magic disappear from the hero's face. He suggests that the teacher no longer remain in the open air and find shelter. Together they set off on a journey through the same rocky lands. Soon they reach the City of Darkness. The guards see their mayor and command to open the gates. Reagan is surprised that the necromancer has more than one role. He replies that he only recently assumed the position. Settlements in the game are divided into 5 types according to their size, and the City of Darkness is the second largest. Suddenly, the heroes are met by living skeletons inside the city walls. Gold-level boss, Risen Knight, rides past his subordinates. He falls on his knees before his master and greets him. Daniel introduces everyone to his student named Winter River. The knight admits that he is impressed by the strength of Reagan's aura and sees him as a worthy opponent. The hero decides to ask the teacher if he is worried about being close to the borders of the light faction. The necromancer confidently replies that he has nothing to fear, and as a necromancer, he considers death a small price to pay. He also asks Reagan not to worry because the light faction definitely does not want to see the curse of the rebels. Of course, Daniel won't drag the student to the grave with him, and he promises this. However, a war between the factions is brewing now, and before that, the hero will have to undergo long training. Such honesty and loyalty makes Reagan wonder if he really is a simple character. To begin with, the necromancer asks the hero to deal with the hordes of mice that are distracting the skeletons. Having left the city limits, the hero looks around thoughtfully, trying to decide where the mice are hiding. On the way, he meets a skeleton and he decides to ask him. He replies that the mice live in the northern part of the city and complains that the rodents like to get inside. Having walked around the city from the right side, Reagan approaches the cave. There, under the stone wall, he meets mice. There really are hordes of rodents. And what's more, a simple mouse turns out to have twice as many health points as a hero. Reagan realizes that if he attacks one of the mice, the others may follow suit. Moreover, he is surprised that the mice simply run away from him, although he did not even approach them. It turns out that the mice sensed Reagan's aura, and so they ran away. He has no choice but to start chasing the animals. By activating the evil march, he quickly catches up with the mice and throws them out of the way. The mice continue to escape, and Reagan begins to attack them without thinking. After 2 hours of battle, he finally gets the artifact, the black iron bracers. Suddenly, the system reports that someone has become the first to gain talent in the game. The next message says that the massacre of mice enraged the silver-ranked Demon King. Suddenly, a huge mouse bursts out of the ground right in front of him. Reagan decides that he must be the first to kill the silver boss and prepares for battle. The mouse rushes to attack him. The hero activates the evil march and moves the Mouse King for a split second. The animal recovers too quickly and takes away almost half of Reagan's health with one bite. The hero quickly recovers his health and realizes that he only has a chance thanks to his title. After an hour of Reagan's fight with the beast, it still has half its health left. The guy knows that this is usually the moment when the boss's second phase begins and prepares for changes in the fight. Suddenly, the giant mouse lets out a deafening squeal. Reagan looks around in confusion, trying to understand the reason for such behavior. At the same moment, hordes of rats begin to run out of cracks in the ground. The system also reports that the Demon King was frightened by the hero's aura and decided to run away. Reagan resolutely grabs the mouse's tail, deciding that their fight is not over yet. Soon their journey through the earth ends and they find themselves in a huge hole. The mouse immediately receives a health boost from this location. Reagan also senses a strange energy here and decides that there must be a rodent nest here. Near the wall, he also notices a huge purple crystal. Suddenly, the energy of this crystal hits him straight. The system informs the hero that all his indicators have been increased by 1,000%. Before the hero has time to recover from his surprise, the giant mouse rushes to attack again. Reagan, too, can't wait and launches an attack in response. Now his blows deal much more significant damage, increased by 1,000%. Just a few swings of the sword are enough to defeat a silver-level monster. Receives a scroll as a reward for defeating the silver-level boss. With Protector's power, he can raise low-level skills to a higher level. Meanwhile, all players receive a notification that Winter River has defeated the silver-tier boss. Everyone is shocked that someone was able to defeat a level 30 monster so early in the game. Reagan, meanwhile, decides to check what other rewards can drop from the giant mouse. But suddenly, the system informs him that his talent acquisition test will begin in 3 minutes. According to Daniel, the test does not allow the use of weapons, but no one is stopping you from using skills. In order to obtain the most powerful talent, he decides to use the scroll right now. Thanks to him, he decides to strengthen his sword skills. Now his skill evolves into Art of Killing, which is much more effective. Suddenly, the purple crystal that the hero noticed earlier begins to behave strangely. It splits, revealing an electric diamond that amplifies hidden powers. One of the 3 uses has already been activated earlier, leaving Reagan with 2 uses remaining. By this time, the time to prepare for the test expires and the system begins the countdown to teleportation. The next moment, the hero is transported to the forest. The task is to kill the enemy in 10 minutes. Looking around in search of danger, the hero notices only a rabbit. The system informs that in case of loss, the talent level will be the lowest. The hero is disappointed, because the rabbit's stats are even lower than the slime's. With one kick, he kills the rabbit, completing the first level of the challenge. A skeleton immediately appears on the clearing. The system offers to defeat it in order to obtain a higher level talent. The hero also notices that his level is equal to the enemy's level. With one blow of his fist, he sends the skeleton flying. Reagan is eager to see what talent he will gain if he can defeat all his enemies. After the guy defeats the skeleton, a level 20 demonic wolf appears in the clearing. The monster immediately rushes to attack him. Reagan grins and stands up because such an enemy is not worth even a minute of worry. The wolf deals the first blow and the boy easily dodges it. Unlike the wolf, Reagan's blow finds its target without difficulty. After defeating the monster, the hero's possible talent level increased to a high level. The next moment, a knight appears in the clearing. He immediately rushes to meet Reagan. They exchange a few blows, but then one strong blow from the hero is enough to kill the enemy. Now he will be able to obtain a special level talent. After the knight, a dark gold level winged tiger appears in the clearing. If the upper limit of the talent was raised before, the hero will now struggle to raise the lower limit. The monster turns out to be level 40 and Reagan's level is adjusted accordingly. The hero lunges first, but unexpectedly the blow has no effect. Then the guy kicks him. He then delivers a series of blows until the monster is unable to fight back. But the tiger turns out to be no ordinary one. He attacks Reagan with lightning, taking away a significant portion of the hero's health. Gathering all his strength, the boy hits the animal on the head, winning. As a reward, he is even given 5 skill points, along with an increase in the level of possible talent. Reagan decides not to delay and applies the glasses immediately. After a couple of seconds, a strange energy begins to circle over the clearing. In place of the tiger appears a water dragon, a divine-level boss. Reagan's level is also rising, but he is no longer as confident of his victory as he was before. However, the bonus received earlier and the increased attack power will definitely be useful in battle. But his worries about the huge difference in levels between him and the dragon still haunt him. Suddenly, the monster attacks first, sending a blast of energy at Reagan. He barely dodges a direct blow. However, even a tangential attack deals huge damage to the hero. While the guy is in shock, the dragon rushes to attack and takes away another huge portion of his health. He pins Reagan to the ground, preparing to finish him off. The hero's thoughts are confused. He tries to think of a way to counterattack or escape. Unable to come up with anything better, he spits into the open mouth of the water dragon. This tactic gives him the opportunity to escape the dragon's deadly grip. But because of his decision, the dragon's hatred towards Reagan increased significantly. The hero understands that he is now truly in danger. But suddenly the system reports that Reagan has awakened a hidden power after reaching level 50. Powerful streams of energy penetrate his body and creep across the entire clearing. With this skill, Reagan can sacrifice 10 levels to increase his stats. He knows he can gain levels again, but he can't afford to lose. An unexpectedly surprised expression appears on the dragon's face, and he asks where Reagan gets such strength from. The hero is genuinely surprised that the monster can speak. However, he offers the dragon to surrender rather than fight. But the dragon is not going to do this and only activates his power. Reagan understands that they are unlikely to reach an agreement, and so he attacks with an angry march. While the monster is immobilized, it deals a series of blows to it, which are twice as strong as usual. Tired of the guy's attacks, the dragon opens an ocean space in which all enemies will be attacked. Reagan realizes that he needs to end this battle quickly, because it won't just be the monster attacking him here. But as he gets closer, a poisonous sea snake bites his hand. Despite the poisoning, the hero decides to continue the attack on the dragon. But suddenly another animal, a toad, wraps its tongue around his leg and prevents further movement. With some effort, Reagan finally breaks free from the toad's grip. Finally, he gets close enough to attack the dragon. Having mounted the monster, the hero deals him a series of blows, but he cannot even fight back. Having finally found the strength within himself, the dragon throws the hero off himself. But Reagan just keeps beating him up. After a few blows, the guy wins and the space created by the dragon is destroyed. The system informs that the hero has a high-level talent and invites him to move on to the next stage. Immediately, the space around is transformed. Reagan is no longer in the forest, but in a space filled with bubbles. By touching one of them, the hero sees a description of the talent that is hidden inside. He only has an hour, so he won't have time to check everything and choose effectively. He decides to skip most of them, randomly checking the options, hoping for his luck. After a few minutes, he realizes that all the talents here are high level, but there is not a single one that is special. After 20 minutes of searching, he finally comes across a bubble that looks unusual. It contains a special level of talent that gives incredible opportunities to restore health. However, Reagan's plan was to find offensive talent, so he decides to continue the search. 50 minutes pass in search of a similar special level skill. But Reagan still finds one more and boldly grabs it. This talent will give you a boost to attacks, but has a penalty to defense. Despite this, the hero is stunned by how many powerful talents he found. He decides to choose the last bubble he found with a talent called Madness. The system congratulates him on gaining the second talent in the entire game and gives him additional rewards. Also, the talent evolves to the highest level, at the same time adding a point to the hero's luck. After this, the system returns him to the normal game world. Reagan decides to test what his talent looks like now that it has been enhanced. Now there is no penalty to defense for the player, and he simply adds 50% damage to attacks. Enchanted by his acquisition, Reagan completely forgot about the items that had fallen from the Mouse King. Looking closer, he sees armor, weapons, and a lot of coins. Unfortunately, the sword and boots require a higher level than he has. Returning from space, his level returned to its previous level, 19th. He decides not to waste time and continue killing mice in order to promote him and complete the necromancer's task. Reagan also decides to notify all players that he has received a top-level talent. Everyone begins to suspect that he is the system's favorite because he moves forward so easily. A couple of minutes later, the hero receives a congratulatory message from the head of the guild. He also asks Reagan to tell him how he got such talent and promises to pay him generously. The guy decides that it's not hard for him to say that everything depended on the skills and class level of the character. He also talks about how to get the highest level of talent when it comes time to choose. After the story, hundreds of thousands are deposited into Reagan's account. The guild leader thanks him for the information about the class and its development. Within a few minutes, announcements about training for obtaining quality talents appear all over the server. The guild leader has set the price and will most likely easily recoup the advertising costs. After an hour of killing mice, Reagan reaches the required level to don the armor. He returns back to the city to tell the teacher about the success of the task. Daniel congratulates the student and tactfully avoids asking about his talent. Instead, he offers Reagan the chance to choose a reward for the destruction of the rat horde. In response, the hero hands him the sword and asks him to make this weapon available for use right now. The necromancer agrees that this weapon is just right for a student at this stage of development. As a reward for completing Daniel's task, he receives not only experience but also a gift ball. The necromancer explains that this orb helps to reduce the required level of an item. Reagan activates it and orders it to act on the sword. Seeing a good result, he asks the teacher if it is possible to use a blessed sphere on the sword. The necromancer is surprised that Reagan has such an item, but he only replies that he got it by accident. However, he supports the student's idea of using both enhancements on one sword. After all the enhancements, the silver-ranked sword becomes gold-ranked and becomes significantly stronger. Reagan's own power also increased so much that his own rank became silver. The necromancer praises the apprentice for his achievements. However, he has one more task for him to do to increase his strength. It turns out that some adventurers are prowling around the city and they cannot be allowed to freely collect information. To do this, Daniel asks Reagan to kill them all. Although the hero did not expect to hunt other players again, killing them does indeed bring a lot of experience. He asks the teacher to give him the elixirs again for the task. Unfortunately, the necromancer can no longer simply give him something, but only sell it at a discount. Reagan is very grateful to him until he sees the price of the elixirs. They turn out to be very expensive, from 35 silver coins to 1 gold coin. The hero, however, has no choice and buys elixirs with all the money. After some time, he begins searching for those who invaded the city. Suddenly, a huge shadow blocks the sun. Raising his head, he sees a huge dragon in the sky. Reagan casts an envious glance at the monster, because he won't be able to ride something like that for a long time. Suddenly, he notices movement out of the corner of his eye. The player with the role of a thief fearfully tells someone that he has been exposed, and also that Winter River became a silver-level boss. Reagan finds it funny that the spy can't decide what to do because he can hear everything he says. He jumps out from around the corner and demands an explanation. But in response, the hero kills him with one swing of his sword. The spy returns back to the village, trying to understand how someone could have such a strong stroke. The system also adds that it was a standard hit, making the guy nervous. He quickly sends the coordinates of where he was killed to his leaders and warns them of the danger. Reagan, meanwhile, realizes that a whole army of players will soon appear here. He decides to hide and observe the situation from afar. Within 10 minutes, dozens of players have gathered at the site while the hero hides in the bushes. He decides that they should be killed one by one, since even such weak players in a crowd can be a threat. Meanwhile, the commander of the Furious Storm Guild orders everyone to search the place. Everyone disperses and begins to comb the area. It doesn't take more than a few minutes before one of the players reports the coordinates of where he was just killed. Everyone immediately rushes there, hoping to find the Winter River there. However, they find no one alive at the place their friend told them about. Suddenly, several players complain that they too have just been killed. The entire guild is thrown into confusion and whispers of retreat begin. Their leader only grits his teeth because the preparation for capturing the enemy was very expensive. However, he can't argue that if the enemy continues to kill them one by one, it doesn't make sense. Meanwhile, after another murder of one of the players, Reagan's level increases again. The system also informs him about the successful completion of the task. Suddenly, a huge banner appears in the sky. It says that the Light faction will soon retake the city. Some time ago, the Dark faction occupied this city, and Danelle became its mayor. It is also unexpected news that Reagan is required to participate in the battle, otherwise he will face a fine. Usually in all games, the Light faction wins and the hero may not have a chance to win. He decides to talk to the necromancer about this and he calms him down. Daniel assures that he will not let his student be harmed and promises that he will help him escape from the battlefield. The necromancer himself accepts his fate because he has already fulfilled his mission. He evasively explains that Reagan will understand everything later and asks not to worry. The teacher decides to change the subject and asks what reward the hero would like to receive. He honestly replies that he would like a pair of suitable boots. The system immediately informs him about the acquisition of a huge amount of experience and a pair of silver-level boots. He also reached the required level to finally equip all the items he wanted. Meanwhile, Daniel decides that it's time for Reagan to learn the basic skills of a dark swordsman. He gives a task to find a rebellious swordsman who will show the guy everything he needs. Reagan gratefully accepts the quest, ready to head into the ghost swamp. Daniel points north and tells the student to go straight there until he finds a swamp. A few minutes later, the hero sets off on his journey. After just a few hours of walking, the system informs him that that very swamp awaits him ahead. The sound of splashing water can be heard nearby. Looking closer, Reagan notices that these are rotting living corpses. They notice his approach and all rush to attack him. With a few hits, he holds monsters in place, dealing damage. But unexpectedly, one of the corpses sank its teeth into his hand without causing much damage. In just a couple of minutes, all opponents are defeated. Although they are not very strong, they give a surprisingly large amount of experience points. Sensing an opportunity to easily level up, Reagan eagerly charges into another group of monsters. Within half an hour, the system congratulates him on reaching a new level. However, all this wandering through the swamp makes Reagan wonder where the swordsman he needs is. Tired of the pointless search, he simply calls the dead man to him, mentioning that he came from Daniel. Then an unfamiliar voice very close by makes Reagan turn around. A stranger sits on a rock under a tree nearby. He asks why the necromancer sent the hero here. The guy is ready to swear that there was no one there a moment ago. He understands that there is someone powerful in front of him, and he should be careful. Reagan hands the scroll Daniel gave him to the swordsman. He pulls the scroll out of his hands and reads it. Suddenly, his mood changes when he realizes that the person in front of him is the dark swordsman. He replies that he can teach him the techniques, but first Reagan will have to complete a few assignments. He also mentions that he is bound by the rules of this place. This wording surprises the hero. Characters usually don't separate themselves from the game, so as not to do things that the developers don't expect. Reagan decides to ask directly what the swordsman thinks about the rules of this place. He replies that he and even the gods have no opportunity to break the rules of the world. And even if he tried, the system would kill him. The man suggests that the hero figure it all out himself over time. But for now, he asks him to kill some rotting corpses to prove his strength. From the system's window, Reagan learns that he has to kill as many as 1,000 monsters. As he disappears, the swordsman tells the hero to simply call him when he's finished. Although it's already 11 o'clock in the game, the battle for the city will be very soon, and so he decides not to wait. Deciding to abandon sleep, Reagan moves deeper into the swamp. Finding and killing corpses doesn't take much effort, but it still takes up his time. One of the corpses even leaves behind a bronze-ranked staff. After 5 hours of endless battle, the system informs Reagan that he has completed the swordsman's task. At that very moment, the illusion spell that Daniel cast disappears. Returning back to his terrifying appearance, he hears the voice of the swordsman who has risen from the dead. He appears nearby and explains that this is the true form of the Dark Swordsman. He is also impressed that no amount of corpses was a threat to Reagan. As a reward, the hero receives a new level in the title of Cheryl's disciple. The ghost warns that Reagan is too weak to learn anything impressive. However, the guy is presented with a sufficient number of skills from which he is offered to choose. All skills are high level and require a huge amount of gold to learn. Reagan is already doubting that he will find something affordable when his eyes fall on something interesting. One of the skills allows you to immobilize an enemy within 10 meters for 3 seconds. The second increases the first hit on the enemy by 250%. While they are not as strong as the ones Reagan cannot afford, they will certainly help him now. The swordsman advises the hero to come back later, when he is stronger, to learn other techniques. The hero thanks the teacher for his help and promises to come back when the time comes. After completing this task, Reagan removes his diving helmet and decides to take a nap. A few hours later, the sun is shining right through his window, but he is woken up by a call from a friend. It turns out that in the battle that will happen soon, you can get very rare items. Although the system did not announce it, Jay has connections to be informed of such details. A friend also advises not to miss hunting for small monsters, because you can also get nice bonuses there. This news grabs Reagan's attention and he announces that he has a plan. Having finally woken up, he returns to the game, to the swamps where he ended up earlier. He jumps up and runs back to the city to talk things over with the necromancer. Once in Daniel's office, he announces that he has come up with a plan to protect the city from the Light faction. He recalls that despite initially belonging to the Light faction, he was able to join the darkness. This is what gave him the idea. The Dark faction can recruit players to help them. But despite Reagan's enthusiasm, Daniel responds that joining the darkness is not so easy. But the hero replies that they don't necessarily have to accept them into the faction, but simply reward them. But you can also include a competition element so that the best one has the opportunity to join the Dark faction. Of course, in Reagan's mind, this promise did not have to be true. The necromancer praises his student for such an invention and agrees with the hero's plan. In just a couple of minutes, all players receive an invitation to join the army of the Dark faction. Players are excited about this offer, despite the risks. The rewards of the Dark faction seem better to them. After this, Daniel casts another spell on Reagan to hide his appearance. This time the spell will last him a whole month. The necromancer explains that his health affected the power of his spells. The hero says that he met Cheryl, and he is waiting for his return when he becomes stronger. Daniel is glad that the rebellious swordsman has no plans to return to the Light faction. He also says that after his death, Cheryl will become Reagan's teacher. The necromancer orders the apprentice to go and become stronger so that he will be at the top of the player list when the battle begins. The first task on the way to this is the destruction of the enemy camp. Even before sunset, the hero sets out on his journey from the city. Soon he reaches the sunny forest. There he quickly stumbles upon a camp of the Light faction. The camp is inhabited by lunar soldiers who have the status of ordinary monsters. Lacking advanced stealth skills, Reagan decides to pick off his enemies one by one the old-fashioned way. Here he decides to practice a new skill that allows him to immobilize the enemy. The hero manages to deliver one strong blow, but it is not enough. The soldier quickly comes to his senses and calls his comrades for help. Combining several of his skills to power up the attack, Reagan finishes him off with one blow. Unfortunately, the soldier's friends heard his cry and all rush to help. But even when he finds himself in the minority, the hero poses a serious threat to the soldiers there. 10 minutes later, he kills everyone in the camp. Reagan is disappointed that there are so few enemies here, and therefore so few experience and money. But suddenly, a huge warrior with axes at the ready comes out to him. It turns out to be General Kenton, the leader of the lunar soldiers. He learned about Reagan from the Light faction's wanted list and hopes to secure his future by defeating the guy. The general rushes to attack, but Reagan, thanks to his agility, avoids damage. Using Evil March on such a strong enemy only takes away health from him without immobilizing him. In response, Kenton delivers several fairly powerful blows with his axes in return. Reagan realizes that his health and defense are significantly inferior to the enemy's, and therefore decides to act more carefully. He overtakes the clumsy general and, finding himself behind him, strikes. Inspired by the prospect of a worthwhile fight, Kenton strikes with his axes, which the hero blocks. Meanwhile, a woman watches their fight from behind a tree. When the hero has a third of his health left, he decides it's time to act. He takes a potion to restore his health. Reagan then activates Deadman's grip to immobilize the general. Taking advantage of the man's momentary stupor, he uses Evil March, dealing even more significant damage from above. Kenton strikes, but the hero simply runs away, avoiding damage. Reagan runs off into the forest like lightning, even surprising the man with his speed. The same woman comes out to him, asking how he is feeling, deciding that they are alone again. But suddenly Reagan appears in the clearing again. In these few minutes, he has completely recovered his health and promises not to run away anymore and to fight to the end. Within a few minutes, they find themselves in the same position as before. Reina uses her abilities again and escapes the battle, restoring her health. Kenton is left with half health and looks around irritably in search of the annoying enemy. The woman approaches him again and suggests that they leave here. Just as suddenly as last time, Reagan appears before them and offers to continue the fight. With a smirk, he shames the general for thinking about running away from the battlefield. He angrily reminds him that it is Reagan himself who is constantly running away. In response, the hero again rushes into the attack. Kenton raises his axes, ready to meet the enemy. He uses a special technique that prevents the hero from striking, but at the same time deals damage to him. Reagan decides to wait until the skill wears off and then attack back. It's only when Kenton stops his deadly tornado that the boy charges. Quentin falls to his knees in confusion, not understanding why his opponent's stamina keeps running out. Reagan responds by killing him with one powerful blow. The system reports the mission completed. The hero also gains a new level. After that, he decides to check what items the general dropped. Not only did Kenton drop 2 gold coins, but he also dropped his weapon with silver rank armor. Reagan immediately contacts the head of the guild to sell him the finds. He doubts whether it is worth buying armor with such a high minimum level threshold for wearing. But the hero still manages to convince him to buy the items for 200,000. Suddenly, Reagan notices a woman nearby who is with the general. He decides to use her as a messenger and delivers a message to the Light faction. As soon as he lets go of the frightened girl, she immediately runs away. Reagan decides to go back to the city. Finding himself in front of the necromancer, he again asks to give him the gift sphere. Daniel sees no point in refusing and with a smile gives the student what he wants. Reagan activates the sphere on the new armor, empowering it. The system congratulates him on reaching the required level of power and opening access to the rating. Unfortunately, he doesn't see his name among the top 10 characters of the Dark faction. Then he decides to use the search by name, because he should definitely be on the list. Within a second, he finds out that he is almost at the bottom of the list. Daniel advises him not to be upset, because he sees in him the potential to take a place in the first places in the future. All thanks to his hidden role as a dark swordsman. The previous host managed to do it. But when Reagan tries to ask about his fate, the necromancer simply changes the subject. He remembers the other adventurers who decided to join their side. Daniel is confident that at this rate, the City of Darkness has a chance to survive the battle. But for this, you also need to strengthen the skeleton soldiers. The system immediately gives Reagan the task of training skeletons. A little later, the hero leaves the game and decides to meet a friend. Jay talks about a problem that arose this morning, but Reagan assures him that everything has already been resolved. The guy is also very surprised that his friend is already in the 20s, because that is the top of the rating. He asks Reagan to tell him the game number so that he can add him as a friend. The hero decides to tell him what the Winter River is, but asks him not to tell anyone about it. Jay is very surprised by this discovery and does not understand how he did not understand this before. He understands the danger of revealing Winter River's identity and suggests pretending he didn't hear it. Reagan responds by saying that he trusts him. Later, when he returns to the game, the system reports that the Light faction has decided to attack early. The hero turns pale when he realizes that the battle will take place tomorrow. Nearby, he notices skeleton soldiers who are busy training. He gathers them around and announces that Mayor Daniel has ordered him to take charge of their training. The system tells Reagan that soldiers can learn by watching him perform techniques. Taking the hint, he asks all the students to watch him carefully and jumps into the air. He then lands using the Evil March. The hero shows a dent in the ground and asks the skeletons to use this ability to crush them. The system notifies that different skeletons perceive the training differently and learn the skill at different levels. Thanks to his instructions, the skeletons adopt this skill as their primary one. Soon the mission to rescue the skeletons is considered complete, and Reagan hurries back to the necromancer. Daniel is not surprised by such haste on the part of the student because the faction of Light will attack tomorrow. As a reward, the hero receives a mysterious item, a moon shard. The shard is capable of protecting the bearer from mortal harm once, but the necromancer is not confident in its power. Reagan is surprised that his teacher gives him such a strong subject. The necromancer replies that he is destined to die, and therefore he would rather pass the artifact on to his apprentice than to the invaders. As he leaves, he asks Reagan not to be stupid tomorrow and to only care about his own safety. The next day, the hero logs into the game half an hour before the expected battle begins. He's a little surprised to see a huge number of players in the previously half-empty City of Darkness. The system warns him that desertion will be punished by the loss of 10 levels and a penalty to all stats. Suddenly, one of the players notices him and recognizes him. All those gathered enthusiastically surround him and praise him for his success in the game. Reagan ignores their greeting and rushes to check the walls, because he will be in the third wave of defense. There he meets Daniel, who simply looks into the distance. The system immediately informs about the beginning of the battle and that the hero should not enter the battle before the appointed time. Very soon, a huge army of the Light faction approaches the city walls. Their leader is a bronze-level player who orders his men to spare no one in the city. When the Light faction's army gets close enough, the gates to the city open, releasing the Dark Army. Trained in the Evil March skill, skeletons will boldly jump on players, stepping on their heads. Thanks to this technique, they quickly break into the enemy camp. The necromancer looks with pride at his student, who used such a clever trick. Unable to withstand the attacks of the skeletons, some players begin to leave the battlefield. Their leader is furious at the enemy's dirty tactics and smashes the skeletons with a huge mace. Suddenly, a battle rating appears in front of the hero with a counter showing who killed how many. Reagan decides that he can't just watch the battle and feels the need to do something. He approaches another player nearby and asks for a free weapon. The guy turns out to be an archer, which doesn't quite suit Reagan. But the hero decides to buy a weapon from him anyway. The system warns that the attack damage has decreased due to the change of weapon, but the guy boldly pulls the bowstring. His arrow kills one of the enemies with one shot, thus earning Reagan his first point. The fighters below are shocked that one of their high-level leaders was killed so easily. Reagan in turn loads another arrow and prepares to attack again. The next shot turns out to be much stronger than the previous one and kills a strong tank warrior. The archer who gave Reagan the weapon is shocked at the power that comes from joining the Dark faction. The hero understands that he has talent not only for the sword, but also for the bow. The third time, as an experiment, he loads 3 arrows. But the arrows do not reach the enemy, and Reagan kills 3 soldiers of his own army. The necromancer scolds him that at this rate, only the 2 of them will remain in the army of darkness. After this, the hero decides not to mess around and aim 1 arrow at a time. Within 20 minutes, the leader of the army of light finds himself on the brink of death from an arrow. His final instruction is to order his fighters to complete the conquest of the city. As his body begins to disappear, his subordinates quickly collect the items that fall from it. This kill immediately moves Winter River up to 4th place in the rankings. The system reports that the second wave of attack will begin soon. The leader will be a bronze-ranked lightning axe. He boldly leads his subordinates into battle to retake the city. When they get close enough to the city walls, a rain of arrows falls upon them. Meanwhile, the army of darkness is gathering a second wave of defense, led by the skeleton general. With movements already learned, the skeletons trample on their enemies, plunging them into terror. Lightning Axe screams as he charges forward to meet his equal. But his ardor is killed by one blow from the skeleton general. Left without a leader, the soldiers of the Army of Light take to their heels. The system reports that a third wave of attack will begin soon, led by evil soldier Kane. He quickly breaks through the defense of weak soldiers and calls Winter River to him. The man is also a silver-rank boss and is waiting to meet his equal. Reagan knows him from the newcomer village because he owes him 2 gold coins. The skeleton general is sent to defend the city against Kane. As expected, one strike from a silver-rank boss's sword is enough to defeat him. Inspired by the victory, he rushes towards the city, calling his soldiers with him. Reagan decides it's time for him to enter the fight himself and draws his sword. The necromancer asks him to take care of himself and not let the heat of battle take over his mind. As the hero descends, the system informs that the third wave of defense will be led by Winter River. Adventurers can't wait to defeat him, expecting a huge prize for it. The system tells Reagan that he needs to hold out on the battlefield for 20 minutes before retreating. One of the players decides to attack him, but the hero reacts quickly and dodges. When the remaining soldiers decide to surround Reagan, he casually kills the first of them. Due to the number of enemies, the hero's defense is strengthened and his health is increased by 200%. Having gained courage and greed for the rewards for killing the boss, the soldiers rush to attack him. With one blow he kills two, dealing them an unheard of amount of damage. Reagan has no problem killing soldiers in droves as he moves forward. Soon Kane himself rushes forward to fight him. The city soldier has been significantly pumped up and now deals quite a lot of damage. The man is offended by the hero's deception and demands that he pay for it with blood. In response, Reagan offers to simply return the 2 gold coins they had agreed upon. Suddenly, several soldiers sneak up from behind and attack but do little damage. The hero turns to them and tells them not to blame him for their rudeness in return. Kane charges again and tells Reagan not to be so cocky in the face of death. They cross swords and begin to exchange blows. The soldiers understand that they have no chance to intervene in the fight because the battle is too intense. To gain an advantage in battle, Reagan activates Deadman's grasp to immobilize the enemy. While Kane is frozen in place, the hero deals him a series of blows. But at the moment when the freeze ends, Reagan kills a simple soldier nearby. Everything becomes clear when he gains a new level, and his health is fully restored. The soldier immediately lunges, hoping to gain an advantage. But Reagan responds with an angry march, immobilizing him again. He unleashes a series of lightning-fast strikes on him until Kane is unable to fight back or dodge. When the enemy begins to move again, Reagan drinks a potion that speeds up regeneration. The soldier activates the Fury skill, which increases his attacks and their speed. The hero responds by ordering the skeleton soldiers to protect him. At the same moment, the skeletons that fought the invaders come towards him. Thus, Reagan finds himself surrounded by a human shield of the dead, while Kane burns with rage. The man, meanwhile, asks the adventurers behind him to move away so that they stop strengthening the hero. But as expected, they are not moving from their place, hoping to grab a piece of the reward after Reagan's death. With only 30 seconds of power left, Kane decides to go for broke. With his sword, he kills skeletons in droves, but others immediately take their place. It's only when he has 10 seconds left that he finally gets to Reagan to attack. But he suddenly jumps up and uses an evil march, which makes Kane unable to move. After this, he deals blow after blow to the exhausted and immobilized soldier. Finding himself on the brink of death, Kane begs for a draw as he is pinned to the ground. But Reagan only finishes him off with a sword strike. For this, he is awarded 500 rating points. The soldiers of the Army of Light understand that there is no one else as strong on their side. Moreover, none of them dare to approach for the items that dropped after defeating Kane. Reagan decides to take all the awards and put them in his inventory because he needs to hold out for a little while longer. After this, he decides to use the remaining time to kill enemy soldiers for experience. Over time, they realize that they are fighting an invincible enemy and begin to give up and run away. But one of them decides to try his chance and destroy the Winter River. It turns out to be the player from the first place in the rating, the flame swordsman Tim. Reagan realizes that he is facing a similar player with a hidden class and asks what he needs. The swordsman knows that by acquiring a hidden skill, the system gives rewards, and that is what he came for. Tim activates a skill that increases his stats by 50 to 10%. The skill takes away 10 levels when used, and the hero understands that the player is risking everything for the sake of the duel. Meanwhile, the swordsman is already rushing to attack him. Reagan doesn't have time to parry and loses some health from the sword strike. Suddenly, the hero jumps up and uses Evil March, knocking the player to the ground. Because of this, Tim is immobilized for 2 seconds. He decides not to leave anything to chance and activates the protection of the fire god. Reagan, meanwhile, begins to launch a lightning-fast series of attacks against him. The player is left with only a handful of health after this and makes a desperate attempt to escape. But the hero is not going to let him go so easily. He stops the fugitive with the help of a dead man's grip. Suddenly, Tim calls a player named Jane for help because he feels that he will soon be finished off. Immediately, a beam of a spell hits him from the crowd. The player's health immediately increases to maximum levels. She is angry with him because she is forced to use her rare spell when the guy was confident of victory. Tim, meanwhile, orders all the priests on the battlefield to begin healing him so that he can weaken Winter River. Although not all players agree to trust the guy, most still decide to let him fight Reagan. Tim calls on the hero to kill him with one blow because while the priests are helping him, he has no chance of winning. The guy asks the player to check if he can kill him in 2 minutes. He immediately takes off running, and Tim rushes in pursuit of him, having understood his plan. After 2 minutes, the flame swordsman's buff ends and he tries to catch his breath and gather his strength. That's when Reagan catches up with him and kills him with one blow. The next victim is the priestess Jane, who has empowered the player. After this, the hero's level increases to 30. Suddenly, all players receive a notification about the 4th wave of attack. Everyone is shocked by the level 80 boss, which is clearly beyond the capabilities of any of them. Daniel yells at Reagan to come back immediately, as the next phase is not for him to participate in. After checking the battle rating, he realizes that he has definitely secured his place in the top 10 players. With a calm heart, he returns back to the city to wait for the right moment. But suddenly one of the other leaders of the raiding blocks his path of retreat. Sleepless, second only to Reagan, he knew no one could defeat the hero. The guy gets tense and asks the player to move away before he dies and loses a level. But suddenly he takes out a scroll with a curse and asks Reagan not to be arrogant. He activates it and invites the hero to check whether he can withstand such an attack. A thunderstorm is gathering over the battlefield. The system reports that all enemies will suffer colossal damage. The next moment, a rain of lightning falls to the ground, striking the soldiers of the Army of Darkness. Naturally, Reagan does not escape this fate either. But suddenly, when the dust clears, it turns out that the necromancer has repelled the attack on his student. Sleepless demands to know why a simple character risks his life for the player. But instead of an answer, he receives a charge of a spell that finishes him off. Reagan reminds the teacher about the moon fragment and how he was safe. Daniel advises the hero not to waste the precious shard on such a trifle. Their conversation is interrupted by the fire mage Brandon, who is touched by the warm relationship between them. Reagan realizes that this is the level 80 boss that the system was talking about. Meanwhile, the skeleton general asks him to return to the city so as not to get hurt. Daniel supports the dead man and tells Reagan that together they can deal with the enemy. Instead, he asks to allow Cantor and him to take care of the mage who came with Brandon. The necromancer asks his student to obey and retreat to the city, but he refuses. Daniel eventually agrees to split the two fourth wave bosses between the three of them. It's funny, but the old man and his companion agree with this arrangement. The Legion of Ice Mages from the Light faction begins preparing for an attack. The next moment, players from the Dark faction are hit by freezing rain. Some people start leaving the game under fictitious reasons, just to avoid participating anymore. The necromancer orders everyone to return to the city and defend their positions. The players obey him and obediently run to the gate. Brandon, however, is not going to let them escape and orders his assistant to pursue the enemies. They cleverly penetrate inside the city before the gates are closed. But once inside, they find themselves trapped at gunpoint by hundreds of archers. Despite this, such weak attacks have no effect on them. Sneaking up from behind, Daniel attacks the old man with a spell. Brandon senses the threat and turns in time to parry the attack with his spell. During this time, his assistant remains with Reagan and the skeleton general. Cantor is the first to attack, activating the additional skill, Agility. As a defense, the sorceress erects an ice wall in front of herself. The skeleton horse has no way to break through such protection, but Reagan is rushing towards him. Thanks to the ability Evil March, he destroys ice, but does not cause noticeable damage to the enemy. The hero is surprised that his ability was blocked so easily. The woman explains that the skill is very powerful, but not in such weak hands as his. Meanwhile, Cantor is already rushing towards her from the other side, distracting her. She throws a spell at the skeleton, which hits his horse. Reagan realizes that a level 40 gold-ranked boss is no match for the sorceress. But Cantor finds the strength to rise up and stand against her again. In response, she sends ice spikes at him. Cantera is affected from all sides. While they fight, Reagan decides to use the purple crystal, which enhances the potential. The system reports that he has activated the artifact and his stats have been increased by 1,000%. The skeleton falls to its knees while the sorceress chooses which spell to use to destroy it. But at that moment, while she's absorbed by the skeleton, Reagan is already rushing towards her. This time, she doesn't manage to block his attack and his evil march deals heavy damage to her. The old woman does not understand how such a weakling became so strong in an instant. She's immobilized for 10 seconds and the hero decides to take advantage of this time. Cantor also decides not to stand aside. A moment later, his spear pierces the sorceress's chest. With half her health remaining, she tries to call Brandon for help. The old man is annoyed that the player was able to put a level 50 mage in such a position. Distracted from the battle with the necromancer, he sends a spell towards Reagan. While the hero is dodging, the sorceress regains her ability to move. But when she is already running to safety, she is overtaken by the attack Dead Man's Grip. Reagan expertly places her as a human shield in front of him to protect himself from Brandon's attack. An attack from her own comrade takes away almost all of her health. The final blow comes when Reagan himself attacks her with a sword in her back. After killing such a strong enemy, the hero's level rises to 33. For the sake of reputation points, he also notifies all players of his achievement. All the players are amazed by Reagan's skills and ask him to sell the crystal for any amount of money. The hero ignores them and puts the items that fell from the sorceress into his inventory. Brandon, meanwhile, is mad with rage. He creates a very powerful fire spell to attack the guy. Reagan decides that he must counterattack the mage while the crystal's effect is still in effect. But even under these conditions, his blows do not cause any damage to Brandon. Daniel asks the student to stay away as it is too early for him to fight such strong opponents. Even though he uses restorative potions, he admits that he himself can barely stand on his feet. Brandon, meanwhile, warns them that none of them will get out of here alive. He activates Sea of Fire, a skill that deals massive damage every second and slows down the enemy's movement. Almost all players who recently joined the Army of Darkness and Skeletons die in an instant. Reagan also begins to receive damage, and with this he calculates the approximate strength of one blow from the magician. The necromancer shouts at him to take the canter and get out of here so as not to get hit by the Sea of Fire. Reagan responds by promising to find a way to attack from a distance. Brandon, meanwhile, continues to attack them with fire spells. To protect the boy and Daniel, Cantor jumps in front of them, taking all the damage on himself. Reagan runs up to him as he falls to the ground. The skeleton asks him not to die so stupidly, because he is destined to shine on the continent. The necromancer tears the apprentice away from Cantor and orders him to get out of here immediately. Once out of the Fire Sea's spell, Reagan asks the teacher to use the crystal, but he refuses because necromancers do not belong to the world of the living. At this time, they are overtaken by a new spell from Brandon. Daniel deftly parries his attack. The power of their spells is so great that when they mix, the ground beneath their feet becomes covered with cracks. The old man tells the necromancer that the battle would have lasted longer if he had acted more intelligently. Reagan, thrown to the ground by the force of the blast, frantically searches his inventory for something that might help. Suddenly, his eyes fall upon a previously unseen object, a book of skill. It grants the ability to see all character stats up to the highest levels. Reagan decides to take advantage of the opportunity and learns the skill Eye of Truth. Before this, all the indicators and history of the magician were hidden due to the difference in levels. But now everything is visible. Thus, the hero learns Brandon's only weakness, his endurance. He immediately reports this to his teacher and advises him to wear down the old man with attacks. The necromancer immediately calls all the skeletons to attack. From all corners of the city, the dead flock to the pyromancer. Of course, they turn out to be too weak to resist, but they serve as an excellent distraction. Daniel knows that Brandon won't be exhausted by skeleton attacks and decides to take a different route. He reminds the student that according to the plot, they don't have a chance and the light faction must win. However, he refuses to die just like that. In addition, he asks Reagan to kill the old man. Daniel begins to cast a spell so powerful that the pyromancer's attacks simply go unnoticed. The next moment, a beam of dark energy falls from the heavens to the earth. It completely envelops the necromancer. The system reports that all of his stats have been increased by 10,000%. After this, Daniel stands on the battlefield, strengthened by an unknown blessing. He praises his student and promises that they will definitely meet in the future. He then kills Brandon on the spot with one blow of his staff. Immediately after defeating the mage, the necromancer's condition worsens. Reagan rushes to his aid, but he only asks him to leave before it's too late. But suddenly the system reports that due to Brandon's death, a hidden boss, Herbert, has been activated. Reagan immediately uses the Eye of Truth, but even with it, all of the Holy Knight's indicators are hidden. Herbert, meanwhile, is looking forward to destroying both the necromancer and his puppy. Daniel predicts that if his church continues to collect the remains of the necromancers, it will not end well. The knight takes out his spear and asks him not to worry about it. He points the gun at Reagan and asks him to speak his last words before he dies. The hero understands that he can do nothing in this situation. After waiting a couple of seconds, Herbert decides that the guy has nothing to say and swings his arm to kill. But suddenly Cheryl parries his blow. The knight knows that an ordinary swordsman cannot do this and demands answers. Unfortunately for him, he's already escaped, taking Reagan with him. With incredible agility and speed, he leaves the city, jumping from roof to roof. Meanwhile, Daniel spontaneously combusts, having given all his strength for the sake of strengthening. After it, a tiny cloud filled with purple and black swirls remains on the ground. After picking up the essence, Herbert glances at the soldiers who recognize him. He orders them to increase the reward for the capture of the Dark Swordsman, dead or alive. After the death of the necromancer, the system announces that the city has been captured by the Light faction. Those who joined the forces of darkness received an increased reward, but now you are forced to escape carefully. Meanwhile, Cheryl and Reagan reach the Ghost Swamp. The hero is furious and shocked that the swordsman did not save his teacher either. He only replies that Daniel activated the meteor phenomenon and could not survive this technique. Besides, there were people in the Light faction who were much stronger than Herbert, and he couldn't afford to risk the Dark Swordsman. While Cheryl is impressed by the battle, he still has to test Reagan before accepting him as a student. The boy resolutely accepts his offer. Only after becoming stronger will he be able to see the teacher again. The quest is to retrieve a treasure on the edge of the map. Cheryl asks Reagan to finish it off quickly. Despite the fact that the city's defense failed, the hero still receives a significant reward and increases his level. Following this, he receives an announcement of a reward for his capture. The reward promises not only rare artifacts, but also a hidden class, along with a valuable book with a skill. Reagan realizes he's in a bigger trap than he thought after defeating Brandon. However, he promises himself that one day he will defeat the Holy Knight. Having calmed down a bit, he decides to check the rewards for today's event. The first thing he does is check the items that dropped from Kane and decides that they suit him perfectly. As a reward for defending the city, he received the Wind Ring, which reduces damage by 20%. Reagan immediately puts on the ring, because the urine effect is useful. The bracers that were given as a gift also turn out to be better than his current ones. Only with these new additions, his strength became significantly greater. Suddenly, the system offers him to change his class to the Risen Swordsman, but the hero immediately refuses. Since he refused the offer, the system offers him a skill or armor of corresponding value in return. Reagan decides to choose a skill because the armor will change, unlike the skill. As a result, the system gives him the ability Battle Zone, which weakens enemies and strengthens friends in the radius. After dealing with the aftermath of the battle, the hero decides to take on the quest. Following the map, he comes to the volcano. The system warns him of danger. The treasure must be located at the top of the mountain, and the climb itself will be dangerous. Suddenly, a roar is heard behind the hero, and a huge stone golem rises from the ground. He barely manages to dodge the blow of the huge monster. With his power, Reagan can assess the creature's stats. It turns out that the stone monster has strong defense, but a rather weak attack, so it is not dangerous to him. Besides, Reagan can test the power of Battle Zone on such weak monsters. With the very first blow after activating the skill, he deals more than 15,000 damage. In response to this, the golem does not attack but sits on the ground. It activates a skill that weakens enemy attacks and increases defense. Reagan finds this reaction funny because the monster is just waiting to be beaten. After 1 minute, the hero defeats the monster and earns experience points. After doing some calculations, he decides that he needs to kill another 480 monsters to level up. He climbs up the mountain, and with every step, the air becomes hotter. Suddenly, his gaze falls on other unfamiliar creatures. The system suggests that these are fire monkeys that can taunt their enemies. At the same moment, the monkeys begin to mock the hero, his appearance and name. In a fit of rage, Reagan jumps up on their perch to kill them all. This time, he also uses a new skill and rushes into attack. They respond by attacking him with stones, taking away an unexpected amount of health. But the hero doesn't care. He closes the distance and continues to hit them with his sword. Soon the ledge is littered with ape corpses. Reagan approaches the last survivor. He decides to give her a chance to reform instead of facing death. Reagan steps on her head, pinning her to the ground, and demands that she take him to her friends. The monkey agrees, trying to save his own skin, and obediently leads him forward. Suddenly, the system informs the hero that from now on, the talent level rating is available. In first place, and the only one with a super special rank talent, is himself. A few minutes later, the monkey brings him to his fellows. Just like last time, one of them starts making fun of Reagan. But unlike last time, he doesn't wait and kills her immediately. A few minutes later, the fire monkey who had been leading him forward looks at the corpses of his friends in shock. Reagan is not finished with her yet and orders her to be led further to the next group. But suddenly a huge fire monkey blocks his path. It turns out to be the Monkey King. Reagan begins to doubt his success against the gold-level boss despite his progress. Meanwhile, the monkey guide complains to his king that the guy forced her to obey. In response, the hero simply gets rid of her so as not to listen to her chatter. The king is enraged by such impudence and attacks Reagan, but he deftly dodges. Instead, he strikes first using the Evil March. But the Monkey King counterattacks with the Sharp Tongue skill, humiliating the hero, making the attack lose its effectiveness. The guy wonders if he can humiliate the monkey in return to reduce the effectiveness of his attacks. He grins and says that with such a strong leader, all the monkey subjects should be safe. This taunt reduces the Monkey King's defense by 10%. This is followed by a sword strike that takes away some of the king's health. In response, he mocks that this blow could be considered tickling. For some reason, the system counts this answer, and the effectiveness of Reagan's attacks decreases by 10%. In response, he also mocks the monkey, saying that he is angry because the females refuse to talk to him. Apparently, this hits the fire monkey's sore spot, and his defense is reduced by 20%. The enraged monkey attacks the hero with a fiery fist. Reagan doesn't have time to dodge, but activates wind protection, which reduces the damage from the blow. The monkey deals 30,000 damage, knocking the hero back. He stays on his feet and decides that the damage is not so serious as to be worth worrying about. And so their fight continues, exchanging verbal and physical blows. Soon the system reports that the Monkey King's defenses have been broken, and Reagan's attack power has increased by 300%. After that, one hit is enough to finish off the monster. The system rewards him with a new level. The system announces that Reagan now has the title King of Ridicule, which increases damage to the enemy. At this time, the monkey's body disappears, leaving behind a reward. A fiery helmet and a fiery blade appear on the ground in front of the hero. After this, he decides to continue his journey up the mountain. Almost at the very top, the system warns about the hero's health decreasing due to environmental conditions. Suddenly, he notices an unusual stick, which seems to mark the place where the treasure was hidden. When he pulls the stick out of the ground, it is described as a very weak weapon. At this moment, Reagan realizes that this is the treasure he was climbing for. A little upset, the hero turns around to go back down, but suddenly his body is covered in dark energy again, as if something had awakened the Dark Swordsman's potential. The system reports that this is because he senses a presence of the same kind as himself nearby. At this time, he wonders if the treasure is something else. Following the system's prompts, he finds himself on an empty patch of land without any markings. Reagan decides that something must be hidden underground and begins digging with his sword. It doesn't take long before the tip hits something hard. Pushing the earth aside a little, he discovers a wooden lid. Looking underneath, he discovers a deep pit. The system tells him that this is the Tower of God's Suppression. Reagan is hesitant at first, but then remembers that without risk, you can't achieve much and jumps into the hole. A moment later, his feet touch the stone floor, but some kind of attack has already been launched at him. Thanks to his lightning-fast reaction, the hero manages to activate wind protection to reduce damage. The only thing that saves him is that this spell was old and began to wear off. It takes him some time to recover his health, and he decides that he must act more carefully. But his next step forward will also activate some kind of spell. A stream of flame is immediately launched at him, and Reagan is forced to activate wind protection again. This spell also turns out to be old and doesn't do the full damage it could. He feels a mysterious presence pulling him further and sees steps not far from him. Stepping carefully further, he realizes that not every centimeter here contains a spell. But the next moment he's attacked by a spell again. Only after half an hour does he reach the treasured steps. But when he tries to approach them, he is stopped by an invisible force. Reagan realizes he has hit an invisible wall. Even a sword strike does not help remove the restriction. He guesses that there must be some mechanism here that will remove the restriction. Suddenly, a fragment of the moon appears on its own from his inventory. Unexpectedly, with the shard hovering in front of him, he easily overcomes the obstacle. He begins to suspect that the fragment may have been intended by the owner to serve as a key to the barrier. As he goes down, the hero notices marks from weapons on the walls and realizes that a battle was taking place below. As he descends the steps not far from the exit, he notices a figure leaning against the wall. The system suggests that it was the Soul Reaper Carl. Unfortunately or fortunately, he turns out to be dead. Reagan learns that Carl was a demon god, but died here and no one ever knew about it. Looking around, he feels a presence pulling him further and decides to leave Carl's skeleton. The feeling continues to lead him deeper into the tower, and he obediently descends to the floor below. As he steps down the steps, in the dim light, he notices mountains of bones in front of him. He notices that some of the skeletons have high-level weapons, which means that this place is really worth fearing. After this, he goes down one floor. Immediately, he is overtaken by the spell of many swords, which takes away 800 health points per second. The hero realizes that he has gotten close to the source of energy and sees something interesting ahead. In the middle of the room stands the skeleton of the previous Dark Swordsman. The swordsman himself died long ago, but Reagan suspects that the energy of the armor called him here. The hero decides that this will be his reward for the quest and raises his hand, but suddenly a loud voice stops him. The skeleton in front of him begins to exude an unprecedented energy. This energy begins to form into a ghost next to a stunned Reagan. The ghost of Lewis, the previous swordsman, greets the new bearer of the title. He tells the hero that he cannot simply give away the armor, but obliges the hero to earn it. He creates a physical copy of himself and challenges Reagan to fight him at the peak of his power. The system asks if the guy wants to accept this task, and he decides to agree. Lewis turns out to be a gold-tier boss with decent hitting power and powerful abilities. The swordsman rushes to attack, but Reagan asks him to wait. He noticed that the ghost had the ability to reincarnate, which was not available at the level he embodied. The ghost just shrugs, justifying himself by saying that his memories of life have become a little clouded. He continues his attack, and Reagan activates his combat area skill to boost his attack and weaken his opponent. The hero successfully parries the blows, and Lewis refuses to believe that he learned these techniques himself. To gain even more advantage, the guy activates the evil march and it freezes for a second. Taking advantage of this moment of weakness, Reagan captured the dead man. After this, he begins to deliver a series of lightning-fast blows to Lewis. The swordsman's ghost watches the battle and evaluates the boy's every move and strategy. He decides that it's time to end the warm-up and decides to increase the difficulty. A new layer of energy covers his projection. Reagan also notes that the enemy's aura changed literally in an instant. The next second, Lewis's enhanced projection attacks him, sending a blast of energy from his sword. The hero doesn't have time to dodge, but he manages to activate wind protection. But even with the weakening effect, the blow deals more than 30,000 damage. Reagan decides to drink a recovery potion and think of a new tactic. The battle with the swordsman was not easy. Lewis, meanwhile, tells the hero not to relax, because now everything will become even more interesting. His projection activates dark reincarnation, which greatly enhances his skills and stats. Reagan realizes that after a 50% boost, he can no longer attack the enemy head-on. The swordsman, meanwhile, moves around him with lightning speed and attacks him from behind. With one blow, he takes away more than 40,000 units of health from the guy. The hero understands that it is time to drink another potion and tries to increase the distance from the projection. The swordsman, meanwhile, uses the energy charge again and sends it out with a swing of his sword. He wouldn't be able to dodge at normal speed, but by using Evil March, he accelerates by 200%. He then attacks Lewis with a Dead Man's Punch, which slows the opponent for 2 seconds. This tactic works, and Reagan is at least able to dodge the blow. He then uses Dead Man's Grip to immobilize the swordsman and continues to strike with his sword. The ghost is pleased with him because the guy knows how to weaken the enemy with the help of skills. Reagan understands that he must keep in mind the skills of projection and retreat when control ends. The swordsman, meanwhile, enhances his skill and sends out an energy attack with a wider range. The hero decides to hide behind a column to avoid damage. The structure can barely withstand the force of Lewis's attack. He realizes with horror that he could have died if he had come under this attack. There are 5 seconds left before the evil march is restored, but Lewis is already rushing into the attack. With one blow, he takes away almost 90,000 health points from the hero. Reagan begins to dodge and increase the distance because another blow like that would simply kill him. Luckily, by this time, he has regained access to the evil march. Leaping into the air, he strikes the swordsman. While Lewis is immobilized, Reagan uses the Dead Man's Punch again. Already knowing the swordsman's tactics, he manages to dodge the sword strike in time. Instantly, he activates Dead Man's Grab to immobilize the enemy. Following the familiar pattern, he then uses multiple, lightning-fast sword strikes. Having taken away a significant portion of the swordsman's health, Reagan decides not to be greedy and retreat in time before the control wears off. But suddenly the system reports that Lewis has gained resistance, reducing the control force by 80%. Reagan realizes that he doesn't have time to dodge and trusts in a fragment of the moon so as not to die completely while taking the blow. But unexpectedly for him, the blow is not as strong as it could have been. The system then reports that due to the dark reincarnation, the swordsman's level has been reduced by 10. This becomes the answer to the question of why he couldn't kill the guy. Reagan has come to his senses by this time and parries Lewis's blow. He launches a rapid attack on the swordsman, striking blow after blow. He eventually delivers the finishing blow, killing the projection. The ghost appears to be pleased with the young man and his fighting style. Meanwhile, the system congratulates the hero on completing the task and leveling up. Lewis assures him that he will keep his promise and snaps his fingers. As a reward, Reagan receives the very same gold-level Dark Knight armor. The armor requires constant replenishment of enemy blood to function, but is also available for improvement. The armor also has the Intimidating Presence skill applied to it. It gives the ability to deal damage to enemies within the radius, and also slows them down. Lewis notes with a smile that the young man looks pleased. Reagan can't contain his joy at such an award, because he received very valuable items. He immediately puts on the armor and announces that this armor was as if created for him. Irritated by such self-confidence, Lewis bids farewell to Reagan, his mission complete. But at this moment, the hero asks him to stay. It turns out that the hero has his eye not only on the armor, but also on the sword that the skeleton holds. Since this sword is not as valuable as the armor, the swordsman allows the guy to take it for free. But in this case, he asks to return the medallion that hangs around his neck to one lady. With his interest, Reagan accidentally activated a side quest to return the artifact. Before that, he only took part in story quests, but side quests usually expand the picture of the game's world. Reagan decides to accept the assignment, but asks about the owner. Lewis only replies that he doesn't know. He admits that he spent very little time with her and did not even know her name. Moreover, the woman herself preferred to hide her identity and the ghost cannot provide any information. But suddenly he remembers that this skill is very rare and suggests that she might be from the Sword Pavilion. This pavilion is located in Chinfeng City, but it is hidden to avoid hostility between the princes. Reagan decides to ask how he can enter the Light Faction city without revealing himself. In response, the swordsman says that it is not a problem and activates the spell. He imparts knowledge to the hero on how to hide his aura on his own. The hero now has access to the skill Art of Stealth, which hides information about him. As a final question, the hero wonders where the fragment of the moon that he holds in his hand could have come from. Lewis begins to stutter in shock. With his last strength, he asks where the young man got it from. Reagan replies that it was given to him. The ghost guesses that the hero has established a connection with someone powerful. He only says that this someone is the cause of the massacre in this tower and his death. He doesn't have time to say any more information and disappears into thin air. Reagan begins to realize that Daniel was not an ordinary person at all, but a very strong one. Now he understands why the necromancer refused to talk about the death of the previous dark swordsman. However, the question remains about the lack of hatred towards him as a new swordsman. Reagan realizes that the answer to this question awaits him in the future, but for now, he decides to focus on a side quest. When he removes the medallion from the skeleton, it simply crumbles to dust. Thus, Reagan gets his hands on the bloody sword of the spiritual level, which, like the armor, feeds on blood. Considering all the enhancements and improvements, the hero understands that he definitely has no ordinary sword in his hands. Suddenly, the steps leading down to the 5th floor are engulfed in flames. This fire, as if enchanted, begins to move towards the hero. He decides to flee rather than explore the lower floors, given the strength of the energy there. Half an hour later, he climbs back up to the surface of the fiery mountain. To know where to return to a little later, he decides to mark the place with the door. But suddenly, he feels the presence of someone impressive behind him. Before him stands a lava python, the ruler of an area called Fire Mountain. Despite his status, Reagan is stronger in every way than the monster. The next moment, the snake attacks him, but the hero manages to dodge. He uses his favorite evil march and paralyzes the python. Then comes the sword strike. After several attacks, the snake's corpse falls to the ground and begins to disappear. Filled with hope after a tough fight with the former swordsman, Reagan decides that he has nothing to fear now. The next day, he returns to the teacher with the treasure he obtained on assignment. Cheryl is pleased with the hero and accepts him as his student. It is also obvious to him that Reagan found more than just treasure on the mountain. He replies that he found new opportunities for development on the fiery mountain. He also reports that he received a side quest on the mountain. He talks about a medallion that he needs to return to its owner. Surprisingly, Cheryl recognizes the pendant and guesses that this item is from the sword pavilion. Reagan is excited by the discovery and asks the teacher to tell him everything he knows. It turns out that the ghost himself was once a student of the pavilion and therefore knows the history of the medallion. He says that every woman in the pavilion, regardless of status, wears such a medallion. But when a woman falls in love, she gives her beloved a medallion as a sign of affection. However, Cheryl warns that this is no ordinary medallion, and its owner is clearly of high status. He gives the pendant to the student, and more calmly assumes that this could be fate. The swordsman talks about his sword, which should also be returned to the pavilion, and suggests going there together. But for now, he suggests that Reagan take a rest, because the journey to the mountain and its conquest is not something simple. The next day, having gained strength, the hero returns to the swamp. There, the teacher is already waiting for him. He immediately suggests that they set off on their journey. The heroes leave the forest and head towards the mountains. Unexpectedly, Reagan decides to ask the ghost what he thinks about his ability to appear and disappear. He replies that it must be some rare gift given by the god of time and space. Meanwhile, they emerge from the gorge, and before them lies the captured city of darkness. Even from this distance, Reagan notices a bunch of light faction soldiers standing guard. Cheryl explains that in order to get to Qinfeng, they need the Dark City's teleportation pad. The teacher says that now is the time to apply the teaching of hiding one's identity. Reagan activates the spell, and the system asks him to provide a fake name and false application details. Instead of a suitable answer, a confused Reagan asks again, and his new name is registered as false name. Cheryl laughs at the chosen name and appearance of her student, but suggests that they quickly go to the city. Once in the city, the hero, instead of blending into the crowd, only attracts everyone's attention. Despite this, he and his teacher easily reach the teleportation circle. For moving to another city, the hero pays 60 silver coins. After this, the heroes are transported to Qinfeng. Despite its proximity to the Dark Faction, this city has never been attacked. Cheryl suggests that Reagan move out at night, as it will be difficult to hide during the day. The teacher suggests spending the day exploring the city. The hero suggests going to the store to stock up on supplies. The ghost takes him to a special potion shop, where a friendly salesman greets them. Since Reagan has managed to accumulate quite a lot of gold coins, he demands that the seller show him the most powerful potions. In response, the seller offers him holy water, which costs 50,000 gold. Despite the strong effect, the hero understands that he cannot afford this. In the end, Reagan decides to stick with standard recovery potions. Cheryl is clearly amused by the situation and advises his protege not to be surprised by the top-notch products here. Suddenly, their attention is drawn to loud voices in the gateway. There turns out to be a man who rudely disturbs the woman's peace. Obviously, there are characters in front of the hero because a simple player would immediately face a fine. The system offers Reagan to accept a hidden quest, and he immediately accepts it. The quest objective is to intimidate the local bullies who are harassing the woman. As expected, when the hero tries to intimidate the character, the latter simply mocks his ridiculous appearance. But when Reagan puts on a menacing face, it has a certain effect on a man. However, the effect turns out to be too weak to drive it away. Then the hero decides to use the skill to find out about the man's skills. He is more than shocked when he sees that this character has the same stats as Brandon. The man also turns out to be the mayor's son, and the conversation with the hero infuriated him so much that he was ready to start a fight. Instead, Reagan asks Cheryl to get rid of the man, saying he is not worthy of seeing his power. The ghost pretends that Reagan is his young master and threateningly orders the mayor's son to leave. Both the female victim and the man who held her are amazed by the incredible energy he radiates. The intimidation is successful and the man runs away, promising revenge. Despite Cheryl's irritation, Reagan was more than pleased with the outcome. Having made sure that everything is okay with the woman, he is about to leave. But suddenly she asks her savior to tell her his real name. Unable to come up with anything better, he calls himself by the necromancer's name. The system congratulates him on completing the side quest. The whole day passes in this manner of small chores. In the evening, Reagan and Cheryl approach the gate, ready to move out. Using the ghost skill, they deftly jump over the wall. On the other side of the wall, there is a settlement with Chinese architecture called the Pavilion of Swords. Reagan doesn't know where to go, but Cheryl suggests that he go to the vault while he goes to return the sword. It turns out that the god of swords himself is waiting in the vault. But Cheryl assures that everything will go smoothly. The hero doesn't seem convinced, given the difficulty of the quest, but decides to play along with the teacher. Since any character could spot him here and give him death, Reagan decides that he needs to act covertly. Moving through the shadows and avoiding any people, he moves deeper into the pavilion. Within a few minutes, he finds himself in front of the vault gates. Reagan begins to get nervous and has a premonition that he might say goodbye to life just by crossing the threshold of the building. Gathering his will into a fist, he opens the gate. The system reports that due to the presence of a significantly stronger character here, Reagan's disguise is disappearing. Proceeding deeper into the room, he discovers a girl reading a book. She is very surprised that it was Reagan who came to see her. He, in turn, is shocked that the god of swords turned out to be a goddess. He decides to ask how she knows about him. She reveals that if Cheryl had killed Herbert, she would have been the next one to show up. At this point, Reagan realizes what powerful figures the teacher was talking about. Changing the subject, he decides to ask about the owner of the medallion. Suddenly, the goddess of swords jumps up and runs towards him. She looks at the medallion in surprise and asks where the hero found it. He honestly replies that he received it from the past dark swordsman. The goddess realizes that the previous owner of the role has died because a new dark rider stands before her. Reagan reveals that he met with the remnants of the previous swordsman's soul before he disappeared completely. Since the goddess knows the owner of the medallion, he decides to leave the task of returning the item to her. But suddenly she takes out a blade and demands that he pay for disturbing her peace. Reagan realizes that he has nothing to oppose to the goddess and offers her to take anything from him. Then she lowers the sword to his stomach and asks him to think carefully about the price he is willing to pay. This danger brings Reagan to his senses and he offers her a deal. He will withstand her blow and she will let him go. The goddess is surprised by his offer because she belongs to the light faction and cannot just let the enemy go. The hero assures her that he came simply to return the medallion and has no evil intent. For some reason, the goddess finds his excuse funny and agrees that one cannot kill for such a trifle. However, she holds a sword to his throat and says that she still can't let him go just like that. She offers to fight him in her silver rank form, and the outcome of the fight will decide his fate. Reagan decides that he is up to the challenge and accepts the fight. The next moment, the goddess transports them to a rocky wasteland. There, the goddess actually weakens to the silver rank and is ready to begin the battle. Reagan tenses up because one of the goddess's skills is developed to the level of forbidden and therefore extremely powerful. The goddess is ready to finish everything quickly and attacks first, throwing a sword at the hero. Reagan counters the attack with a dead man's grip and stops the weapon in midair. He also uses the evil march on his sword. The sword goddess admits that she has seen these techniques before, but Reagan has become more graceful in their use since then. She beckons the sword back, but to her surprise, the weapon does not obey her. The goddess of swords is not even surprised by this, but simply creates a new sword. This time, she decides to attack herself and runs towards the hero in an attack. Reagan, meanwhile, activates the battlefield skill, which buffs him and weakens the enemy. But even with these effects, the goddess's sword pierces him through, although it takes away relatively little health. Unexpectedly for her, he grabs her sword with his bare palm, and now she finds herself pressed against the wall. Holding her sword in his grasp, the hero delivers a series of powerful blows to her. Some hits are in vain and are not registered by the system. Eventually, the goddess frees herself from his grip and increases the distance between them. Reagan risks himself but still activates a fearsome presence. This attack takes away over 30,000 health from the goddess and slows her down. The hero rushes into attack, taking advantage of the enemy's stupor. But suddenly the goddess activates a skill, thanks to which she breaks out of her stupor and parries his blow. She then charges up an energy blast and sends a shockwave towards Reagan. He activates wind protection, but even so, the blow takes away more than 40,000 health from him. The goddess is surprised by such a significant reduction in damage and thinks that he has already surpassed the silver level. At that moment, she declares the fight over. The goddess admits that Reagan is much stronger than her, and his talent is truly impressive. The system congratulates the stunned hero on completing the task and reaching level 40. He is surprised that everything ended as quickly as it began, and the goddess did not even use all her skills. She reminds him that his task was to return the medallion, and she never wanted to kill him. After this, she turns away and asks Reagan to leave. However, she warns him that once she leaves this place, a prologue of chaos will begin. The hero asks her to tell him more, but suddenly he is carried outside the hall and the doors slam shut in front of him. He decides that this is a sign and mentally thanks the goddess for the battle and conversation, deciding to move on. After leaving the goddess's aura, he regains his disguise and finds a satisfied Cheryl. The ghost suggests heading back from the pavilion. Within 2 hours, they find themselves back in the swamps, and the ghost unexpectedly thanks Reagan. Now that the sword has been returned, he has no ties to the light faction and wishes to join the dark faction. The hero is surprised that the teacher hasn't done this yet. Cheryl explains that to do this, he must prove his loyalty to the faction, and that he is now free of restrictions. At this moment, the system informs the hero that the first expansion, called Light versus Darkness, officially begins. Reagan realizes that the Chaos Prologue has been activated by his actions and alliance with Cheryl. The system also reports that Star Boss Cheryl, level 190, is preparing to attack in 3 days. Along with him, 2 more bosses will attack other cities in other regions. More and more notifications arrive, but the hero understands that he has to help the teacher in the attack on the city. But the system also announces that he will have to attack, as a separate boss, a small city. Players are shocked to learn that Winter River has already become a gold-tier boss. The system announces to Reagan that he will appear in the 5th wave of attack on the city, as he has earned a place in the faction. Cheryl is pleased that his student was not afraid of responsibility and hopes for his victory. Since the guy has reached level 40, he decides to put on better armor. He even decides to check if he has made it into the top faction, given his skills. But unfortunately for him, he's still just above the bottom of the list. The hero leaves the game. Soon he receives a call from Jay, who is delighted that his friend has become the boss of the mission. He also says that many people are going to Snowtown to kill Reagan themselves. The next time he logs into the game and finds himself in the swamps, he comes across unknown wanderers there. They immediately recognize the hero and start talking about how they need to leave quickly. But suddenly their leader orders everyone to stay. He had been training hard since the reconquest of the City of Darkness to fight the hero. His team is unexpectedly inspired by his speech and decide to work together to kill Reagan here and now. The leader quickly gives the team instructions on who will be in what position and rushes to attack the hero. But before he can even get close, Reagan kills him with one blow of his sword. His comrades follow him in a moment, killed by the hero. He apologizes to them because they never had a chance to begin with. Suddenly, the system reports that the items he put up for sale have been sold off the shelf for a significant amount of gold. Also, a notification comes that the system of exchanging money with the real world is now relevant and reports the rate. Reagan decides to immediately convert the gold he earned into real money. More than 500,000 appear on his account. He goes deep into the forest, hoping to gain a lot of experience to be ready for the upcoming battle. Coming out on the other side, he finds himself in the deserted field. He is immediately noticed by the Dark Panther, an elite rank monster. The hero immediately notices that her stats are much higher than those of the Fire Mountain boss. However, this does not stop him from killing Panther after Panther within an hour. Suddenly, the system notifies that the difficulty of his main quest has now been changed to a higher one. The guild leader also reports that someone in the region he will attack has reached level 60. Despite the threat, Reagan is confident that he can handle such an adversary, as long as nothing gets in his way. Meanwhile, Cheryl moves forward with his army to attack, and the system suggests that Reagan move there. Returning to the swamp, He comes across a large army consisting of rebellious knights. Their numbers are so high that even Reagan couldn't find out about them. The ghost explains that they lack the power to gain consciousness after death, as he did. He also introduces the hero to his army, which consists of elite-level water devils. Unimpressed by their performance, Reagan asks the teacher to gift his army some knights. But unfortunately for the guy, the rules of the world simply won't allow it. However, Cheryl does not leave the student in trouble and gives him a scroll to summon the demon god. While Reagan probably wouldn't need such a boost in a small town, he was still glad to get it. Cheryl asks him to keep the scroll, because the entities that will appear are extremely difficult to control. The boy understands the seriousness of the situation and promises the teacher to be careful. Instead, he asks his teacher for something simpler to help him succeed in battle. Cheryl just pretends not to hear his impudent request and suggests that they move on. A huge army leaves the swamp. Soon they reach their destination, the grassy plains. At first, Reagan doesn't understand what they are doing here, but then the swordsman shows him the barrier that divides the continent. To destroy it and move on, Cheryl activates the scroll. After this, their path is cleared and the teacher urges the hero to move forward. As soon as he crosses the conditional border, the system warns him about enemy territory. All penalties for death here are doubled, but Reagan decides that he has nothing to lose, since one death is the end for him. Cheryl announces that she will take him to Snowtown, since this region is unfamiliar to the guy. A few hours later, they find themselves in snowy lands. From above, a swordsman points out the young man's goal. Filled with anticipation of the battle, Reagan is confident that he will easily conquer the settlement. Cheryl suddenly says that if the student can win, they will enter the treasury of God together. According to him, there are artifacts and trophies kept by the demon gods. At this point, Reagan suggests that they part ways quickly in order to quickly get to the promised treasures. Afterwards, he orders his soldiers to set up camp on this ledge. At this time, he himself decides to raise his level a little in the nearby forests. The journey down takes him some time, but soon he finds himself at the foot of the mountains. Suddenly, he sees an unusual creature between the trees. It turns out to be a snow bear of elite rank, level 55. Reagan realizes that the creature before him is far superior to the panthers he has encountered recently. But despite this, he fearlessly rushes to attack the bear. To weaken the monster, he uses an evil march. And then he uses lightning-fast sword strikes. After just a few minutes, all that remains of the bear is a few coins and a book with a skill. But suddenly the system notifies that the hero's camp is under attack and advises him to go back. When the hero returns to the camp, a real battle has already unfolded there. Local residents fight mercilessly against the water devils that have settled near the city. But when Reagan enters the fray, everything changes. Residents immediately recognize it as the Winter River. The hero notices that they are speaking a different language, but their speech is immediately translated by the system for him. The villagers begin to attack him all at once, but their attacks do not cause any noticeable damage. The players are shocked by these results, because even though Reagan is marked as a boss, he is an ordinary player. Meanwhile, the guy activates Shockwave, which weakens the enemies around him. Due to the damage caused by this attack, all nearby residents die on the spot. Just as Reagan wonders why there are so few players here, he's attacked by a resident who had been hiding until then. The attacker turns out to be the Ghost King, an assassin-class player. Based on the player's self-confidence, Reagan understands that he should be at the top in this region. The Ghost King moves very quickly, but his attacks do not deal significant damage. Nevertheless, the hero allows himself to be beaten. He knows that someone is clearly recording here and doesn't want to disappoint the players and spectators by killing the enemy outright. He drives them to a frenzy, instilling hope in victory. Only at the very peak of interest does he lightning-fast pierce the assassin straight in the chest. This kill gives him a new level, and suddenly all the players in the clearing are silent with horror. The next moment, they all start running away. With this battle, he ensured peace for the camp for a couple of days. He decides to go back to the forest to level up. Reagan devotes 2 whole days to raising his level. But then the system announces the beginning of the task. The hero must lead 5 waves of attack into battle to avoid receiving a penalty for the army. The game itself limits him so that he doesn't finish everything too early. Only when Reagan receives word that the attack on the remaining cities has begun does he order the first wave to move out. One of the fighters turns out to be a bronze boss and announces that he will lead the squad forward himself. Not even a few minutes pass before the first wave is completely routed. Reagan doesn't wait a minute and immediately orders the second wave to move out. The second wave fighters are a little stronger, and it takes the residents longer to defend themselves. Following the second wave, the hero sends a third. At this stage of the battle, players are already starting to feel difficulties in the form of insufficient health and mana. Before the soldiers are killed, Reagan orders the fourth wave forward, but the system does not allow this to be done prematurely. Suddenly, the guild leader calls the hero and tells him about the battle broadcasts that are currently taking place. When the time comes, the guy sends forward the fourth wave, the leader of which is already at level 40. At this stage, most residents begin to experience serious difficulties. The enemy level is too high. Some decide to run and hide, but some remain in place and encourage their comrades to remain in their positions. One girl shoots arrows at the hero's army, causing them to die too quickly. Unfortunately, she was too far away for Reagan to notice her right away. The city guards also provide resistance to the devils. Within 20 minutes, the fourth wave is completely killed. Now it is the turn of the fifth wave, which will be led into battle by Reagan himself. He rushes forward and commands the soldiers to follow him to capture the enemy commander. Players see Winter River and many decide to simply run away, having already seen what he is capable of. The archer asks them not to be afraid and just not to let the enemy gain strength and use skills on them. They remember that they have gold-ranked bosses on their side and the reward they will receive for their defense, and they stay. One even gains enough courage to attack the hero alone. Reagan responds by killing him with one kick, activating the Evil March. He also activates the battle space to strengthen his army and weaken the enemies. The effect of this skill cannot be reduced when the city's defenders start dying in droves. Reagan, meanwhile, moves forward, killing enemies along the way. The system informs him that his sword is being saturated with the blood of his enemies and is becoming stronger. Suddenly, a horseman bursts onto the stage. It turns out to be a gold-ranked boss, Lanta. He is the mayor's son and has reached level 50. Feeling danger, the hero decides to play it safe and activates wind protection. One blow from the knight takes away more than 50,000 units of health from Reagan. Lance's speed and strength impress the hero, but he is even more impressed by the man's possession of a horse. The guy is overcome with envy and decides to kill the knight at any cost. It activates Intimidating Presence, which deals damage to enemies and also weakens them. Lanta gets angry and charges at him, completely unfazed by the damage. But Reagan quickly stops him with a dead man's grip, which causes him to freeze for a few seconds. He then jumps up to use Evil March. The knight reacts with lightning speed, activating ice protection. The hero's blow deals 25,000 damage, but the man's horse negates all damage. Reagan decides that this enemy is too annoying to fight with conventional methods. Instead, he gathers water devils around the rider to make it difficult for him to use the spear. Although the hero wanted to get rid of him on his own, he orders the soldiers to attack Lant together. He then watches the knight's futile attempts to fight off the horde of devils that are attacking him. Within a few minutes, the system notifies of the knight's death. Since the kill wasn't just from his sword, the reward is reduced. But that doesn't stop Reagan from leveling up. The archer is furious that her brother was killed so dishonorably. She decides to avenge his death herself. Meanwhile, Winter River continues to push into the city, killing enemy fighters along the way. But suddenly, the system reports a new dark gold rank boss, Phoenix. The next second, a fiery arrow flies past his head, grazing his cheek. The Phoenix turns out to be the same archer who deftly deals with the attackers. She and her squad unleash a hail of arrows on Reagan's army. The hero barely manages to fight off the arrows, while his fighters are left defenseless. He realizes that at this rate, his battle will end at the foot of the steps, without even getting close to the enemy. He decides to rush towards the hill to attract the attention of the shooters. Reagan quickly reaches the top of the steps. The archers prepare to attack him with their swords as before. But he deceives their expectations. He uses Terrifying Presence, killing many with one skill effect. Others remain weakened by its effects and are finished off by Reagan with a sword strike. But the arrows do not sleep and continue to shoot arrows, taking away his health. He even has to drink a recovery potion. It is the number of enemies that prevents him from finishing the battle. He decides to entrust this problem to the devils. He orders them to deal with the enemies around him. Phoenix also orders his men to quickly get rid of the undead, taking out another arrow to attack. Reagan, meanwhile, fights, but unexpectedly a blow from the Ghost King paralyzes him. He found it again and is going to finish what he started a couple of days ago. He manages to strike the hero several times with his blade. But when the effect wears off, Reagan finds that the enemy has simply evaporated. He decides to move on, killing soldiers along the way. His health has dropped to half, and the question arises how he will survive 2 more bosses. However, he continues to push forward. This is until the system informs him that his army of devils has been destroyed. At the same moment, an arrow flies into his back, taking away a lot of health points. As expected, it turns out to be Phoenix. She has brought her fighters with her, but orders them to step aside. But they suddenly disobey her and rush forward to attack. The girl only lets go of the bowstring in irritation, unable to fire a shot at Reagan without escaping the allies. The guy smirks because she obviously didn't take into account how greedy players can be. Jumping up, he bounces over their heads, using Evil March to get out of the encirclement. In this way, He deftly reaches the second level of the city. From that level, civilians immediately run down. Reagan, meanwhile, jumps out from the other end of the house and starts running. The soldiers check the entire second level, but do not find the hero. 20 minutes of searching gives them no result, but they know that the guy won't run away because of the fine. The Ghost King is very surprised when a civilian approaches him and asks for help against the invader. The character's name is Bob, but his level is hidden for some reason unknown to the assassin. However, he decides to focus on finding the Winter River and asks a villager to guide him. Bob takes him to a gateway, and the assassin asks where they should go next. But unexpectedly for him, a familiar sword pierces his chest. One hit is enough to kill the Ghost King. No one knows about his stealth skills, and now that Reagan has recovered, he decides to act. One by one, he kills unsuspecting players who trust the peaceful resident Bob. Eventually, someone figures out that Reagan is hiding under the guise of a resident, and soon he is cornered. Tired of pretending, the hero decides to take off his disguise. In the end, his main target is the boss. Within a moment, he kills everyone who has cornered him with simple sword strikes. But suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he notices Phoenix, who has already aimed arrows at him. He manages to repel her attack with his sword. Now that Reagan had removed all distractions, it was the girl's turn to join them. The hero rushes into attack, dodging her arrows. Once close enough, he uses Evil March, immobilizing her. Then, like a butcher, he strikes with his sword, blow after blow. As Reagan expected, Phoenix is invincible at range, but when up close, she becomes defenseless. Suddenly, the girl turns to some Trello and asks him for help. Reagan barely manages to dodge the attack that comes his way. On the roof of one of the nearest houses stands that same Trello, the Cold Mage. He offers the hero to surrender in a good way, and in this case, he promises to make his death less painful. Reagan sees Trello's stats and realizes that his attack won't penetrate the mage's defense. However, despite the dark gold rank, the mage is obviously not far-sighted. To prove this, the hero attacks Trello's priority, Phoenix, to whose aid he immediately came. The magician immediately sends an attack in his direction, but that's what Reagan was counting on when he rushed towards the girl. He dodges and positions everything so that the mage's attack hits Phoenix straight. She barely has time to put up an ice shield before the hero hits her. Trello apologizes to her and promises that he will soon kill the annoying boy, charging his staff. He activates the ice blizzard and directs it at Reagan. This blizzard deals 200% damage to enemies within a 200-meter radius. The hero quickly turns around and runs to get out of her range. But then Phoenix's arrow hits him. The attack blinds Reagan and slows his reaction by 20%. The other players see that he is almost finished off and decide to intervene to take their jackpot. Their attacks are many times weaker than the boss's attacks, but Reagan already knows how to take advantage of their appearance. Unexpectedly for everyone, he activates Intimidation, which immediately destroys ordinary soldiers. It also helps him level up by restoring his health and removing all effects. Phoenix is irritated by the developments, but Trello remains confident of his victory. To curb his self-confidence, the hero decides to demonstrate a trick to him. Phoenix barely has time to activate his ice defense before attacking, but the blow is so strong that it takes away a third of her health. With this attack, Reagan also destroys her defenses. It turns out that the hero used a purple crystal, which increased his potential by 1,000%. His next blow is even stronger than the previous one. The Phoenix, feeling the approach of death, desperately calls for help from the magician. Trello reacts immediately, sending a spell at the hero. But unexpectedly for the man, his attack causes negligible damage. The magician is shocked by the power Reagan has discovered within himself. Reagan, meanwhile, delivers another blow to the girl, causing massive damage. Left with crumbs of health, she begins to cry and beg for mercy. But the guy only finishes her off with an angry march. Trello is shocked because the hero's attacks could not even scratch him before, but now he killed a dark gold rank boss. Reagan gives him a predatory look and announces that it is now his turn to fight. He rushes to attack the mage, and with his first blow, he takes away more than 300,000 units of health. The blow is so powerful that it splits the magician's mask. His body was damaged due to his haste to gain rank, and underneath his mask and bandages is burnt flesh. He falls to the ground, shaken by the blow, and Reagan even feels a little sympathy for the man. With the last of his strength, the mage creates an ice blizzard, but it is ineffective against a crystal-enhanced hero. Then Trello activates self-freeze to somehow save himself from close combat, which he cannot survive. Thanks to this spell, he begins to restore his health, and in the meantime, he decides to find out the reason for Reagan's strengthening. But the hero assures him that he should not worry about such details, but about how much time he has left to live. Even through the defense, he manages to inflict damage on the mage. There are only seconds left before the effect wears off when Reagan breaks Trello's defense. He even tries to escape, but the skilled dead man's grip stops him. The guy has only 1 second left for the finishing blow, and he makes it just in time. The system congratulates Reagan as the first to defeat the dark gold boss. Suddenly, his attention is drawn to a man on the roof of a nearby house. It turns out to be the Holy Knight Herbert, who appeared due to Trello's death. He goes downstairs and is glad that this time Reagan will not be saved by Cheryl, and he will not be able to escape. Although Daniel is a simple character in the game, Reagan feels guilty for abandoning his teacher. Overcome by emotion, he asks what the knight did to the necromancer before he died. Herbert replies that Daniel was destined to die, and as the leader of the enemy, his soul will suffer. This revelation enrages Reagan, causing his armor to rise in rank. The next second, he jumps up and attacks the knight. Suddenly, all the lands in the area are shaken by a huge surge of energy. Herbert strikes the hero with his spear, sending him flying back 100 meters. The landing is hard, and only thanks to a lunar fragment does Reagan survive. The knight doesn't waste time and prepares another attack to finish off the hero. But at that moment, the guy takes out a scroll to summon the demon god. Herbert himself asks him to stop because he does not suspect what kind of cataclysm the call can create. But Reagan decides that he's already dead anyway, and he would rather take the knight with him than die in vain. But seconds pass and nothing happens. The knight begins to laugh that the demon god won't pay attention to a fry like Reagan. He's so carried away by mockery that he does not notice how the space around him begins to distort. A huge rift appears over the city. The same demon god appears from it. The system advises civilians to flee. Reagan feels an incredible pressure of energy, which makes him afraid to even move. Surprisingly, even the self-confident Herbert can barely stay on his feet from horror. The god known as Evil Curse Lore senses the presence of holy energy and attacks its source. To protect himself, the knight activates Blessing of Light, which reduces damage by 99%. He only has a few seconds left to hold out before being teleported away when a god's blow nearly kills him. Even with a skill that almost completely absorbs damage, he's still in danger. Herbert activates Blood Oath to instantly restore all of his health. He barely manages to teleport away before another blow from Lore kills him. Reagan promises to find the coward later. After the knight escapes, the hero is left alone with the demon god. Lore irritably asks him why he summoned him. Reagan justifies himself by saying that it was all because of the knight who fled, frightened by the overwhelming power of the deity. God is offended by such a petty reason for the call and is preparing to destroy Reagan along with this town. But the guy asks him to stop because Lore should be aware of what is happening on the continent right now. He asks not to blame him for everything. God falls silent and then says that he felt the presence of an old friend. Reagan suspects that the matter may be in the fragment of the moon that he activated earlier. He takes out an object and asks if this is the energy the deity is talking about. He also talks about Daniel. Lore admits that this is exactly the aura he felt. Although he and the necromancer had once been friends, they had now become mortal enemies. God regrets not killing Daniel himself and begins to think about killing his disciple as a replacement. Lore begins to gather energy and proclaims that the boy's fate was determined when he tore the scroll. The next moment, he launches a bolt of energy at the hero. Reagan loses all hope of salvation. But suddenly, someone puts a sword in his hand. It turns out to be the goddess of swords. The weapon, meanwhile, begins to carry him away. He barely manages to leave the city limits when a huge explosion occurs at the site. Reagan himself lands in the forest. He watches with relief as the rift in the sky begins to close. He only has time to remember about the goddess when she, a little battered, appears next to him. She smiles at him and announces that the hero now owes her 2 favors. The first service is salvation from Lore. The second, from herself as a member of the Light faction. Reagan grabs her by the shoulders and thanks her sincerely. He offers to take her to a place where she can get treatment, but the goddess refuses and says that she will recover herself. After this, Reagan decides to ask her if the god of curses will take revenge on him. But she assures him that for the demon god, the guy is now comparable in importance to a beetle. Although this comparison hurts the hero's self-esteem, he still thanks the goddess for the consolation. After this, she offers to say goodbye, but asks Reagan not to forget 2 favors. The goddess flies away, leaving him to admire her mastery of the sword. After this, the system congratulates Reagan on completing the quest to conquer the city. His level increases. The city is destroyed, so now he can only go back. As he makes his way back to the swamp alone, he receives notifications of the successful conquest of the other city. He only begins to worry when notification of Cheryl's conquest is delayed. However, he can't do anything. Instead of wasting his time, he decides to check his inventory. From Phoenix, he received a bow, a poisoned arrow, and a cloak. From land, he received bracers and the ability to protect himself with ice. Reagan studies it immediately and tests its effects on himself. But suddenly, the system reports a change in skill under the influence of the Dark Swordsman's energy. Trello gave the hero boots, a fire potion, and a cloak. He also now has a fire demon helmet, which is part of the armor set. The hero decides to put on what his level allows him to, and move on. Once he puts on the cape, he immediately feels his coolness level increase. He also recalls that he never once checked what he got from Brandon's assistant. The staff seems useless to him, so he decides to sell it, and he immediately activates the crystal. After that, it's time to check what he got for killing the first Dark Gold rank boss in the game. The stone is called the Favorite of the Gods, and is able to combine 2 skills, enhancing the final result. Just in time, the system informs him that Cheryl has completed his conquest of the city. The hero decides that he can learn more from the teacher and sets off on his journey. After a few hours, he reaches the ghostly swamps, where the swordsman is already waiting for him. Cheryl is pleased with Reagan's results, and he's also impressed that the demon god actually answered the call. The hero decides not to talk about being saved by the goddess and simply thanks the teacher for the high mark. He makes up a story that he escaped early before the demon destroyed the city. Reagan turns the subject to the crystal he was given as a reward and asks Cheryl to tell him more. He replies that this crystal is very rare and powerful, capable of increasing the skill level. He also advises Reagan to improve weak skills because they have more potential to grow into something worthwhile. The swordsman suggests taking a break from conquests and then heading to the treasury of the demon god. The hero decides to obey and returns the next day, full of energy. A few hours later, he and Cheryl reach Demon Mist City. Suddenly, several creatures run past them, also trying to enter the treasury. Cheryl explains that they are also bosses who led the army forward, and therefore can enter the treasury. The ghost tells about the 5 levels of the treasury and its contents, and asks the student not to go to the 6th level. Half an hour later, a decent number of people gather in front of the entrance to the treasury. Cheryl warns that time to visit this place is limited and suggests splitting up for the best results. When everyone passes through the portal, they find themselves in a hall with high ceilings and columns. The system warns that they have 10 minutes to choose their prize. Only 1 item. Reagan skips the weapons floor entirely, but the potions mesmerize him for a second. He tries to keep his cool and reminds himself that the potions are disposable and he needs something more valuable. The 3rd floor houses a selection of skill books. Although the skills seem good, the hero calls them not good enough. But that's until he notices the Dragon Rift skill, which increases attack and then creates bleeding. The hero picks up the textbook, obviously interested, but reminds himself of the time remaining. He decides to put it to good use and goes up to the 4th floor, where the artifacts are kept. This floor contains scrolls and certificates for class change. He comes across an ogre who is trying to decide which item to take. Suddenly, his attention is drawn to the scroll in his hand. It turns out to be a replica scroll that can recreate any item of a special level or lower. Reagan immediately decides that with such a scroll, he could create a replica of the crystal of the god's favorite. He decides to gently persuade the orc to pay attention to changing his class for strength. The monster is confident that the scroll has great potential, so he begins to lean towards choosing it. But Reagan assures him that the scroll is a waste of opportunity, since they could die at any moment. His tactic works, and the orc agrees that he would be better off focusing on his class than taking the now useless scroll. He puts the scroll back and goes down to the floor below. Although the ogre's words are true for Reagan as well, he still has valuable items that he wants to copy. Grabbing the scroll, he runs to leave the book with the skill in place. Meanwhile, the system informs that visitors have 1 minute left to stay in the treasury. Reagan goes down to the hall and a grateful orc approaches him. He decides to meet the hero and says that his name is Fakey. Orc asks to contact if Reagan gets into trouble. He also happens to be a gold rank boss. The hero didn't expect that this character belonged to the gold rank, and he also turned out to be stronger than Phoenix and Lanta. As he leaves the treasury, Reagan is met by Cheryl, who suggests that they go home. Finding himself in the swamps, the swordsman decides to give the hero a task. He replies that he is ready to help the teacher in any endeavor. Cheryl tells about a secret place in the bamboo forest where rare and valuable animals live. Reagan's job is to find this place and tell the teacher the exact location. The hero sets off on a journey to his destination, the city of the Cloud Monster. While he is left alone, the boy decides to recreate the crystal of the favorite of the gods. After activating the scroll, Reagan takes out the crystal to obtain a copy of it. The spell begins to work, and right before our eyes, the crystals become 2. Already having a supply on hand, the hero decides to activate one of them on himself. To get a stronger version of the skills, he decides to combine Battlefield and Evil March. He looks forward to the combination of skills, hoping that he will get something stronger. The system creates the skill War March of super special rank. The skill exceeds all his expectations in power and brings many additional mechanics. Having dealt with this, Reagan decides to continue the search. Within half an hour, he finds the city of the Cloud Beast, home to many pets and mounts. There is a forest in front of the city, and the hero runs there boldly. That area is not yet accessible to ordinary players. Suddenly, he hears some voices in the thicket. It turns out that they are snake people, cooing under one of the trees. Reagan demands that they stop engaging in obscenity, which surprises the creatures. The male draws his sword and demands that the hero immediately get away. In response, he rushes towards them to attack, using his new skill. War March deals massive damage to the snake and immobilizes it for a few seconds, also weakening it. The blow is so strong that it immediately kills the male snake man. A little further into the forest, the hero again comes across a snake, but it no longer has human features. The system suggests that this is a level 55 fire purple viper. But Reagan is more interested in the news about the large number of these creatures. Using his ability to mock, he coaxes a crowd of these vipers to come to him. 10 minutes later, a whole army of snakes rushes after him, covering the ground like a carpet. This is when the hero activates the military march. All nearby snakes are affected by this skill. But this is not enough for the guy, so he also connects the frightening presence. Immediately, he receives notification after notification of snake killings. Thanks to the ability of wide action, he instantly gets himself a new 50th level. Now Reagan has the opportunity to get additional work from a mentor. His curiosity gets the better of him, and he asks the Soaring Dragon, the guild leader, what the highest level of a player is. Also, while they are on the line, Reagan decides to sell the gear that he is not interested in. No one has ever seen such items, even at the auction, and the Soaring Dragon is shocked that the player has access to such things. He decides to take the equipment and names his price as 2,500 gold coins. Reagan agrees but refuses to include a cape in the price. He explains that the item is enchanted and obviously valuable. The guild leader offers 15,000 for it. The hero replies that this is too little and suggests adding an arrow to the purchase, which would cost 20,000. Despite the fact that such a sum is robbery for the player, the Soaring Dragon decides to agree to the offer. Almost 7 million immediately flow into Reagan's account. Meanwhile, the guild leader is finally informed that the player with the highest level is Merui at 44. The hero is tense because they are only 6 levels behind him. He decides to continue killing snakes to gain levels, and then go on to complete Cheryl's quest. After 1 hour, the hero reaches level 53. Due to the many monsters and the range of the skill, it is easier than ever for him to gain experience. Suddenly, the system informs him that his genocide has greatly angered the king of the purple fire snakes, a dark gold rank boss that bursts out from the ground. The creature is much stronger than Trello, and without the purple crystal, Reagan won't even be able to scratch the snake. The Snake King swings his spear and tells the boy to prepare for a quick death. The hero begins to dissolve into thin air and suggests that they take up this battle a little later. When the spear hits the ground, the guy is gone without a trace. He takes off his diving helmet and breathes a sigh of relief that the game allows him to do something like this in the middle of a fight. Reagan decides to take up running and calls her parents at the same time to find out how they are doing. After taking a short break from the game, he returns to the same place from which he disappeared. Looking around, he sees that the Snake King is gone, but now he needs to find the secret space. Turning to his senses, he notices that 3 trees nearby look unusual. But when he uses the appraising gaze on a tree, the system doesn't understand why he would scan a normal plant. Disappointed, the hero moves on. But suddenly his gaze meets the gaze of the snakeman. He is about to rush to tell the king about the man, but Reagan orders him to stop. He warns that he can kill even at a distance and offers peaceful cooperation with a chance of survival. The snake man immediately falls at his feet and begs for mercy. The hero asks him about a secret space where adventurers hunt animals and treasures. The snake happily comes forward and points in the direction where there is a passage between 3 trees. After this, Reagan orders him to count to 1,000 and not raise his head until the very end. Meanwhile, the hero runs away. He decided not to kill the monster, so as not to attract the king's attention again. He reaches those same 3 trees that look suspicious and realizes that he has reached his destination. As he gets closer, the system congratulates him on finding a hidden space. The task was only to find, and therefore Reagan can already return to the teacher. The guy even tries to get inside, but his strength is not enough for this. He decides that he has nothing more to do here and goes to hand in the assignment. He returns to the swamp in just 2 hours. Cheryl admits that he didn't expect his student to cope so quickly. Reagan replies that it is because of his skills. The system, meanwhile, informs him of the reward for the task. Thus, a book for learning the skill Shadow Pursuit appears in Reagan's inventory, which improves the writer's skill. Reagan realizes that he can now find a means of transportation and not have to walk. Cheryl, meanwhile, says that he has now become the head of the city he conquered, and therefore will soon return there. He gives the student 2 scrolls that he can activate to summon him to him when he becomes stronger. Thanks to these scrolls, the teacher will be able to teach the hero new skills or help in battle. The ghost explains that this is compensation for the fact that he will not be able to give the guy new tasks for now. He suddenly asks Reagan if he regrets joining the dark faction and if he is ready to fight. The hero replies that he has no regrets and will be ready to fight against the light faction at any moment. This answer satisfies Cheryl, and he announces that the hero has fulfilled the conditions to receive the promotion. Reagan doesn't understand how the teacher will now be able to give him the assignment to get that promotion. But he reminds me of the task of finding the hidden space. Immediately, Reagan's body is covered in dark energy. He feels his strength growing. Now his potential has doubled, including the potential of his health, attack, defense, and speed indicators. He becomes the first to receive a promotion at work and receives additional rewards. Now, after receiving the second level, Cheryl offers Reagan to choose new skills. Having examined all the options, the hero realizes that he can only learn 2 skills: evil spirit and bone breaking. At this time, the teacher remembers that Reagan was supposed to become the mayor of Snowtown, but the demon god destroyed it. However, Cheryl insists that the student find a city to use as a vacation spot. After this, the swordsman decides to go to his city, and the hero wishes him a good journey. Reagan realizes that he will no longer have a reason to visit the swamp. He decides to check out the awards he has received. From his inventory, he takes out a boost sphere that can be applied to weapons or armor. The hero decides that now is the time to use it and applies it to his sword. The system reports that the sword's characteristics have been greatly enhanced. The blade itself is coated with energy. Reagan is pleased with the enhancement, as even the sword's ability has been enhanced as well. Now his own simple attack deals over 7,000 units of damage. The boy sets out on a journey to find the Snake King in the forest again. It doesn't take him long to do this, and now, with the power, he looks at the boss without fear. He insults the enemy and weakens him with his skill. The snake responds by attacking, but Reagan is faster and activates the military march on him. He uses multiple sword strikes to strip away health from the paralyzed enemy. He is shocked, because last time the hero couldn't even break through his defense. The guy responds by activating Dead Man's Grip. After this, he decides to use Bone Break, which not only deals damage, but also slows down the enemy. In response, the Snake King activates a poisonous temin that causes Reagan to weaken. The hero understands that at this rate, he won't last even 20 seconds, given the speed of the poison. While he is deciding what to do next, the snake attacks him with its poisonous fangs. The guy understands that he can't stay here any longer. He decides to run to get out of the fog, but smaller snakes are already crawling towards him. Reagan takes advantage of this situation to kill them all with his terrifying presence. This skill restores his own health at the expense of killed opponents. His mindless killing of his subjects enrages the king, and he activates the skill, Power of the Snake God. The hero only laughs at the king's attempt since he has increased speed thanks to the march. When the king attacks him, he cleverly avoids the attack by jumping up. Reagan uses the military march to weaken the enemy. After 30 minutes of fighting, the guy finally delivers the finishing blow. Thanks to the victory, the hero also gets a new level. He is already ready to collect the reward as usual when the system announces that he has launched the martial arts tournament. As the first player to reach this reputation level, he will receive a duel contract. This contract is signed by 2 people. The duel lasts until one dies, and the loser loses everything. The hero decides that he can at least sell the scroll as a last resort, and in the meantime decides to check other rewards. For defeating the Snake King, he receives the Poison Fang, a dark gold tier dagger. Reagan decides to go to some third-tier city to register for the tournament. Suddenly he notices nearby that same Snake Man, who is still busy with chatting. The monster is about to go to his leader when he reaches the end of his count, but suddenly sees Reagan in front of him. The hero says that the king is dead and decides to spare the snake for his obedience. The guy asks what the Snake Man plans to do now. He replies that he now obeys him. Reagan likes the monster's honesty and offers him to work for him. The snake agrees and worships its new master. It turns out that her name is Babel, and Reagan is surprised by this name and the fact that the monster turned out to be a female. He asks the snake to remain in this forest until further orders. He says goodbye to her and asks her to be careful because now this place is not guarded by the king of snakes. Several hours pass before Reagan finds a new city, White Crane. Before entering there, he decides to hide his appearance and identity to avoid problems. Despite his efforts, the system again gives him the name Fake Name. He re-enters the city bald with an absent face and a strange name. After wandering around, he notices a mysterious stone around which adventurers have gathered. According to the tournament rules, participants will be randomly divided into pairs and will compete until there are 10 winners. The first place prize will be a dark gold rank item. Reagan walks up and touches the registration stone. The guy standing next to him scoffs at the fact that a level 18 weakling decided to take part. Reagan replies that it would be better for the man if they were not put together. Otherwise, he would quickly meet his death. The player is angry because he is sure that he can kill the guy in front of him with one finger. He continues to boast about his strength even as Reagan turns and walks away. The hero decides to wander around the city and soon comes to the market. He ignores everything until he hears that they sell riding animals here. The merchant invites him to take a closer look at the horse, presenting him with a stone in which the animal is contained. Reagan takes a closer look and sees that the merchant is selling an adult donkey under the guise of a unique animal. Seeing Reagan's disappointed face, the salesman reminds him that he is the only one here who sells this kind of thing. The hero sees that this is true and decides to ask how much he wants. The cunning merchant asks for 1,000 gold pieces for the donkey. The guy immediately explains that even taking into account the rarity of riding animals, this is too much for a donkey. In response, he offers 100 coins and warns that this is the final offer. The merchant offers to bargain, but his attempts are in vain. Eventually, he realizes that the donkey will only become cheaper over time and agrees to Reagan's proposal. The hero immediately takes the donkey out of the stone and saddles it. The donkey turns out to be surprisingly fast, adding 40% to its normal movement speed. After this, Reagan heads out of the city. After 2 hours of travel, the hero arrives at the territory of the Dark Faction. He reaches the territory of an unfamiliar city, Tanhai, which is ruled by the orc Fakey. Reagan decides that he can use the city as a safe place, as Cheryl advised him. Entering the city, he is surprised at how peaceful and calm everything is inside. He easily manages to find the main building of the city where Fakey should be. The guards at the entrance warn that they cannot allow strangers inside. In response, Reagan asks to convey to the mayor that he wishes to become a citizen of the city. While one of the guards is away, Reagan learns that the previous mayor was bad, and therefore the residents do not mind the replacement. Suddenly, Fakey himself runs out to meet Reagan. The hero begins to briefly explain his situation. Fakey assures him that he is not against his stay and is glad of his appearance. Orc says that he feels out of place as mayor and suggests giving the city to Reagan. The hero immediately receives an offer from the system to accept a new role, but he suspects that there is a second bottom here. In the end, he decides that he does not want to accept this offer. Fakey is very upset by the refusal and says that everything is simple here. He proves so persistent that Reagan is ready to leave, if only he would not be persuaded to take the city. The guy decides to figure out why the orc is so determined to give the city to someone. In response, Fakey suggests going inside the building and discussing everything there. They go up to the orc's office and he begins his story. His tribe lived on the outskirts of the Light Faction's territory, and they were oppressed and forced to work for them. Over time, his people rebelled against their oppressors and drove them out, but this did not make their situation any easier. The Church of Light struck back at the village and Fakey barely survived. Unfortunately, his sister was kidnapped. Reagan realizes that the orc must want to go looking for her, so he gives up the mayor's position. Fakey suddenly says that this situation also affected Reagan. It turns out that he knows the story of the Winter River and the necromancer Daniel. After the man's death, the church took possession of the spheres of all the rebellious mages, of which there were only 9. With such power, one can break the rules of the world, letting creatures from other dimensions into the continent. Specifically, the church does this to call upon one of the gods they pray to. Reagan asks to tell more about the violation of the rules, but the orc himself does not know, because the information came from the previous mayor. From him, he also learned that to summon the deity, 100 girls are needed to cleanse the spheres of evil. Fakey does not understand how saints can treat children like this, and how his sister is to blame. Reagan senses his desperation and asks him how he plans to save his sister. The orc admits that he is even ready to die, but will still try to save her, because he can teleport right to her. Suddenly, the system reports that Reagan has launched a hidden quest, rescue, of a fairly high level of difficulty. Although the task seems extremely difficult, the hero agrees to help the orc in his plan. At first, the orc thinks that the guy is ready to take the mayor's job, but he explains that he will help save his sister. Fakey tells them that the sacrifice will take place in 5 days, and that they should set out as soon as possible. He allows Reagan to use any resources in the city to prepare. The guy asks for some kind of title in the city, but not something grand. The orc agrees to come up with something. The system immediately notifies Reagan that he has become the bard of the city. He also decides to ask if there are any good places nearby to gain experience. Fakey remembers the area in the north where fire demons settled and advises the hero to be careful. Reagan immediately remembers the helmet and assumes that it is in that place that he will be able to find other armor parts. He leaves the mayor's office and goes to the market to buy 100 stones to store the mounts. Having heard about the rarity of this method of transportation on the continent, the hero decided to stock up on stones just in case. After that, he goes to the Fire Demon Mountain. Right at the foot of it, he is met by a couple of elite-class fire demons, but still marked with an asterisk. Reagan understands that this asterisk means that these monsters are stronger than the usual elite ones. Suddenly, his thoughts are interrupted by a girl who comes up from behind. She bares her teeth and calls the hero a thief. It turns out that she is the water dragon he fought when he received the talent. Gigi activates the spell in her hand and says she will never forget that humiliation. Reagan realizes that there is no point in pretending and asks her to take it slow. The dragon suggests that he finish his dying speech as soon as possible. The hero offers her a one-on-one fight because he wouldn't mind being the first to defeat a being of immortal rank. Gigi replies that she is ready, but suddenly a voice from heaven orders her not to create trouble. As Reagan feared, if he had started the battle, a third party might have intervened and he would have died. The dragon snorts and says that the hero is lucky that she was sent here to kill demons and sends him away. The guy replies that he also came here to hunt demons and offers a demon-killing competition. He offers to make a bet. Both will provide a special class item. The one who kills more will win. Gigi realizes that Reagan has an item of this class and suggests to her father that they simply kill the guy and take the item. When there is no reaction, the hero offers another bet, and the dragon accepts. Both have 2 hours to destroy as many demons as possible. Gigi shoots forward. With her water magic, she is an excellent opponent for fire monsters. Reagan decides it's time for him to get to work. Just then, one of the demons approaches him. The guy deftly avoids his blow. He runs past many demons so that they start chasing him. Gathering them all together, he uses War March, weakening enemies in a radius around him. Only when they surround Reagan and are ready to hit him from all sides does he finish his preparations. Jumping in time, he makes the monsters hit each other. The demons turned out to be slow and clumsy, so the only difficulty was in the time it took. 30 minutes later, Reagan takes the lead with 34 kills. He's impressed that she, even at level 20, has already killed 12 demons. But suddenly an incredible idea comes into his head. He remembers that dragons can also be considered riding animals. Reagan calls her and throws her a potion to restore her energy. Gigi doesn't suspect anything and decides that the guy has at least the beginnings of dignity. But suddenly in her hand there is not a potion, but a stone, and meanwhile she begins to be sucked inside. But she crushes the stone in her hand in time and asks what Reagan has in mind. He pretends to be confused. They continue the battle, and even after an hour and a half, the guy is still winning. Suddenly, after killing another demon, an object falls to the ground, part of the fire demon's armor, bracers. Meanwhile, the competition between him and Gigi is coming to an end, and he turns out to be the winner. He immediately approaches the dragon and demands his reward. Gigi snorts and replies that she doesn't have a special class item. Suddenly, her father materializes next to her and scolds her for wanting to avoid responsibility. Reagan is shocked that the dragon in front of him is of a divine level. Jim reminds that this is the second time they have spoken. The hero understands that this is so because he already heard his voice when he passed the test for talent. The dragon takes out and hands him a scroll in payment of his daughter's bet. The scroll contains a dragon's blessing that increases health, attack, and defense, but cannot be used. Jim explains that the scroll is a sign of trust from him, an investment in Reagan's future. He also talks about the aura of bad luck that surrounds the hero and asks him to be careful. When the boy asks when the scroll can be activated, the dragon replies that it will be at the right time. Plus, it reminds us how Reagan wanted to use his daughter as a riding animal. Suddenly, the dragon asks him to summon his current mount right here. Reagan understands that some additional prizes may await him, and without polls, he fulfills the request. Jim announces that he will give one last gift. He uses a special spell on the donkey. The system reports that the donkey has received traces of water dragon blood, which has increased its potential. The donkey mutates and becomes a blue-scaled beast. This transformation also greatly strengthens the animal. The dragon suggests calling this reward a bonus for clearing the territory of demons. Reagan thanks him in return. The system reports that a new task has been added, as well as that the steed's loyalty has reached 100. The relationship between the owner and the pet is measured in percentages, and those that reach 100 will never run away. After this, the dragons bid farewell to the hero. Jim admits that he's really looking forward to the end of the battle between light and darkness. After they leave, Reagan decides to clear the area to level up and complete the mission. It takes Reagan 2 days to complete the task. He successfully raises his level to 60. Thanks to the hunt, he also obtained the boots from the Fire Demon set. Suddenly, the system tells him the time when the martial arts tournament will take place. The hero decides to finish the task he had been working on for so long before leaving. Now his level becomes high enough to equip the bracers and boots from the set. They significantly increase his attack, and he rushes at the next demon without thinking. Within 20 seconds, the system reports that he has successfully completed the task of clearing the area. After this, having prepared his disguise, he teleports back to the city where the tournament will be held. He notices other players nearby, watching with interest what is happening in the arena. Meanwhile, Thunderfist wins a fight with a shielded opponent with his bare hands. Reagan is already anticipating the show he's about to put on when the man next to him says the blonde guy will be a lot of trouble. It turns out that Thunderfist has become famous lately because his class does not require armor or weapons. Suddenly, the man is called by his friend and offered to watch another match. Reagan, meanwhile, can't shake the feeling that he's met the two of them before. At this point, the system announces that his fight is about to begin, and he is teleported directly to the arena. The hero's first opponent is a level 34 barbarian player. He gives the guy a mocking look, already confident in his victory over the newcomer. He swings his hammer and apologizes to his opponent for fighting too quickly, but his blow only takes away 1 health point from Reagan. He doesn't have time to react when the hero's bare-handed blow kills him in 1 second. The system registers a victory for Reagan. He anticipates how shocked the audience is now. But they turned out to be interested in another duel, so no one saw the hero's success. He approaches the arena and sees the demon hunter he met earlier, barely holding on. His opponent is the player Living Fortress, who advises the man to simply give up. He refuses and rushes into the attack again. In the end, his persistence and self-confidence give him victory in the duel. Meanwhile, Thunderfist approaches the arena and admits that Hunter may be the toughest opponent. Looking down, he notices Reagan and begins to doubt out loud that the hero got through the first battle on his own. The system announces that the second duel will begin soon and asks the participants to prepare. Reagan is transported to the arena, where a mage with a level 35 staff is already waiting for him. He is not impressed by his opponent and suggests finishing everything quickly. Reagan supports his idea and again ends the fight with just 1 punch and wins. At this time, the spectators are still watching other fights, not paying attention to him. Now Thunderfist and Demon Hunter met in the arena. The battle is very lively because both opponents are almost equal in strength. Fist, completely unarmed, manages to take away almost all of the Hunter's health. The result of the battle is Thunderfist's victory. All spectators are disappointed that a fighter with such potential and class was defeated so easily. The system announces the start of the third match, and Reagan is paired with Thunderfist this time. He is glad that he finally met the arrogant newcomer and sympathizes that this will be the end of the match for Reagan. To prevent people from saying he kicked a puppy, the blonde gives him a 3-hit head start. The hero is smoking with rage. His first attack is War March, which takes away almost all of Fist's health and pins him face down to the ground. The man doesn't understand how 1 hit could take away 2/3 of his health, especially from a level 18 player. The spectators were also shocked because the blow did not look like something a newbie could deliver. Some people start rooting for Reagan, deciding that he has a hidden and strong class. Meanwhile, Fist breaks free from the hero's grip and increases the distance. He concentrates a clot of energy between his palms, which supposedly causes significant damage to the opponent. He releases energy at Reagan, hoping to finish the guy off. But unexpectedly for everyone, such a strong attack takes away only a few units of health from the hero. He calls Fist a weakling and finishes off the man with the second blow. After this, the system announces that the next matches are scheduled for tomorrow. Reagan decides he has nothing more to do here and teleports away to prepare for his next assignment. He finds himself back on Fire Demon Mountain and decides to find enemies to test his mount. Having saddled the mutated beast, the guy is delighted with the speed and smoothness of movement. With such a mount, he not only finds his target more easily, but also controls them more safely. After 15 minutes, having gathered the demons nearby, he uses intimidation and the monsters die one by one. Reagan levels up without even touching the ground. Gaining experience has never been easier for him. However, after his hunt, there are almost no demons left. Reagan decides to visit the Goddess of Swords. Making his way into the pavilion, he finds the goddess training. She senses someone else's presence and sends an attack in his direction because she didn't want visitors. After taking damage, Reagan is left with only 1 health point. Fortunately, the goddess recognizes him and, surprised, asks why he came. The guy replies that he came to discuss something important. He recounts to her the situation with the ogre and his sister, who was kidnapped by the Church of Light. He knows they want to perform a sacrifice and hopes to stop the ritual. The goddess is obviously uncomfortable, but she reminds him that she belongs to the Light faction and therefore cannot help openly. Reagan realizes that he cannot count on the goddess's help this time. But suddenly she reminds him that he is a dark swordsman and everything about him is evil. The hero is surprised that she says this, because everyone knows him as a good guy. Suddenly the sky above them darkens. The goddess orders him to leave immediately, otherwise she will be forced to kill him. He understands her hint and, thanking her, leaves the pavilion. Reagan takes off his helmet after logging out of the game and decides he should call Jay before he goes to rest. Despite the late hour, the guy picks up the phone almost immediately. The hero asks him for a favor. He asks a friend to send a group of thieves to the dark faction to tell someone that he is in danger. The next day, Reagan returns to the game early in the morning to begin the rescue mission. At this time, Feki is practicing in the yard of his house with an axe. In a hurry, the guy runs up to him and shouts that their plan has changed, and they need to save his sister in 2 hours. The orc believes his lie that the church has moved the time of the sacrifice. He has already bought a teleportation scroll, and all he needs to move to the desired city is a teleportation circle. Reagan hurries him and Fakey activates the bracelet, also taking the hero with him. At this time, the churchmen are already busy preparing the circle for sacrifices. Suddenly, their peace is interrupted by Reagan and Fakey, who teleport straight into enemy territory. The guards immediately point their weapons at them. They thought that on this important day, the faction of darkness would come to them. The hero is unpleasantly surprised that the orc did not think through the strategy at all, and they simply burst into the enemy's nest. Now they are confronted by the guards of the court, elite monsters with 2 stars. The girls inside the circle see the clutter and come closer, but suddenly the patterns on the floor begin to activate. The guards decide that it was the gods themselves who decided to start earlier and take this as a good sign. Reagan tells the orc that he will take care of the guards himself and that Fakey should go and stop the ritual. He immediately rushes into the attack to break through to the circle of sacrifice. Before the soldiers can even figure out what's going on, Reagan is charging at them mounted on his horse. While mounted, he manages to use War March, strengthening himself and Fakey, but weakening the enemies. The guards begin to rise to their feet and try to remain calm. The orc, meanwhile, continues to make his way towards the circle, taking advantage of the enemy's confusion. The soldiers surround Reagan and beat his beast to throw him off his saddle. The hero understands that now the attacks are only on the animal, but he still fights off the attackers. Suddenly, words of support from the girls are heard. They possess healing magic and help as best they can. Reagan is amazed to feel his health begin to recover bit by bit. 10 minutes later, many of the guards have already died, and the survivors begin to worry about where the bishop has gone. 2 hours later, they are all dead, but it is still impossible to get through and free the children. Reagan understands that the orc cannot break through by force and offers his help. He uses a modified steed to strike the barrier. But suddenly, the hero is thrown to the ground. The system reports that his beast has died and cannot be summoned yet. The orc's sister asks her brother to leave here because a terrible bishop will arrive here soon. Fakey refuses to give up and activates a powerful axe attack. But the barrier's power is so strong that it is thrown away. Reagan warns him that brute force will not help them now. The orc begins to despair because they have come all this way and it may all be in vain. He knows that the bishop is at least of the heavenly rank of power, and therefore he and the Winter River cannot defeat him. Fakey suggests finishing the task here and sending the hero back so that at least he can take care of the city. The system offers him to complete the task here and now. Reagan does not understand how this mechanics even works. In response, he asks the orc to give him the bracelet so that he can change places with his sister. Fakey refuses because he cannot allow his friend to sacrifice himself for him. But Reagan reminds us that this is his sister we are talking about, and therefore now is not the time to play nice. Only when he promises that he will get out does Fakey agree to his offer and give him the bracelet. The hero shouts at the girl to hurry up and change places with him. The next second, Liz, the orc's sister, finds herself outside the barrier. Reagan finds himself inside the barrier. The system signals that he is currently unable to move. He watches the family's touching reunion and shouts at them to run away quickly. They move and Fakey promises that he will never forget his help. Suddenly, a bishop appears in the hall and runs at full speed towards the fugitives. But Reagan activates the dead man's grip on him so that he doesn't have time to get to the orcs. The next second, Fakey and Liz successfully escape. More guards come running after the bishop. The priest activates some kind of spell and promises to turn everyone inside the barrier into mincemeat. His spell takes away 19,000 units of health from Reagan. Of course, he doesn't care about that kind of damage. But the girls behind him are clearly starting to feel terrible. The bishop does not stop and continues to harm the children. The hero decides that he cannot simply watch. He remembers that he might have a chance to escape when he recalls the words of the sword goddess. The guy makes a cut on his hand, and his dark swordsman's blood begins to spread across the barrier. In response, the bishop pulls him out of the barrier by the throat and is about to kill him for wanting to disrupt the ritual. But suddenly the time for the tournament comes and the system itself transports the guy away from the clutches of the enemy. He finds himself back in one of the arenas again as a nameless fighter. Suddenly he discovers a fakey bracelet on his hand that has only one use left. To end the fight quickly, he takes out his weapon and starts a fight with the assassin player. The guy recognizes the hero because he saw a recording of him on the internet. But the next second, Reagan kills him with one blow. This happens in the rest of the battles, too. Reagan quickly ends them. Soon the system reports that he has been admitted to the third stage of the tournament. By this time, an hour has passed since the escape. The hero uses the bracelet's last teleportation to return back to the secret passage. But ahead he no longer sees girls, only pools of blood and a bishop hunched over in a bow. When the boy looks back and raises his head, he discovers the light deity Uriel, a spirit rank boss. The bishop is outraged that the boy thought to return and complains to the bishop that it was Reagan who distorted the ritual. The hero understands that he is trapped because the bishop himself is a difficult boss, but he cannot cope with Uriel. Suddenly, the system reports that someone has activated the move, and Reagan realizes that Fakey has not abandoned him. With the help of an exchange, the next moment an ordinary, unsuspecting player stands in front of the bishop. Reagan is transported to the mayor's office, where he is joyfully greeted by the orcs. The girl happily tells that they found a player of the light faction and tricked him into wearing the bracelet. The hero cannot help but notice that this tactic has a rather dark background. Fakey asks him not to think about it and hands him a reward for his help. Reagan accepts a medallion that enhances all of the character's stats and grants several skills. Suddenly, Liz wonders what happened to the other girls who remained in captivity. The hero decides not to hide the truth and says that they most likely died. Fakey tries her best to support her sister, who seems too young to be going through such experiences. The guy continues that by their actions they violated the ritual, and the church used the rest of the girls for the call. He suspects that the faction will soon start hunting them, but the orc shouts that he will simply kill the villains. Reagan replies that he will not leave his friend alone and promises to help with the fight. Suddenly, all players receive a notification that Winter River has launched the main quest, Battle of Light and Darkness. Reagan also receives this notice and realizes that it happened because of his interference in the draft. But suddenly a new notification arrives. A unique version of the quest with increased difficulty awaits him. The hero's task will be to defeat the Seraph Uriel himself, and the punishment for failure will be death. The next notification from the system will be about an attack on the city in 3 days. Reagan's job will be to defend the city, and given the reward for his participation, he is not sure he will survive the battle. He tells Fakey everything and tells him and his sister to run away, because they are obviously hunting him. But the orc refuses, because he believes that he himself dragged the hero into this situation. Plus, now he can avenge those he lost from his village. And Liz is looking to avenge the girls. Reagan realizes that arguing with them is useless and suggests spending the next 3 days usefully. He announces that he will leave the city for now to become stronger. On the way out, he remembers the rewards for the quest. The hero decides to immediately put on the medallion that was once owned by the god of time and space. The item grants the skills Faith and Oath, which are passive. Suddenly, the system reports that his rank has been upgraded to dark gold, and his health has been increased by 300%. Before he can get enough of his new opportunities and skills, Liz catches up with him. It turns out that Fakey sent her to give him another scroll and bracelet as a reward so that he would become even stronger. Reagan recognizes the bracelet and is surprised that it still has 2 uses. The girl explains that the bracelet's teleportation is used separately, and therefore she still has teleportation abilities. She also gives him a scroll with a riding skill, which increases all the player's characteristics if he is in the saddle. He thanks the girl for her help and says goodbye to her. Outside the city, Reagan uses the scroll on his mount. After strengthening, the characteristics of the beast increase significantly. However, he remembers who he has to fight. To defeat Uriel, he needs to become much stronger. The goddess of swords immediately falls away because she is under the influence of the light faction. He decides to go to the fire mountain. After 1 hour of fighting near the mountain, he already reaches level 62. He killed all the new demons, but now there is no one left here. The hero decides to continue pumping tomorrow. To end the day productively, he decides to sell the extra items. The guild master buys everything Reagan offers, as the previous items have been of great help to his people. The next minute, more than 7 million are deposited into the hero's account. He is ready to say goodbye, but the man asks him to wait. The guild leader announces that his people will participate in the capture of the city because he cannot deny them such an opportunity. Reagan does not hold a grudge against the man, but asks him to stay away during the fight so that he does not accidentally kill him. The next day from early morning, Reagan begins to look for a convenient place to hunt monsters. After 30 minutes of wandering, he finds a lake of tranquility. On the shore sits a lonely fisherman of ordinary rank. Reagan is surprised that an ordinary character ended up in the territory of the Dark Faction and decides to check it out. The old man hears him approaching and asks if the Dark Swordsman is interested in fish. He hands him a fishing rod and asks to join him for a while. the system announces the quest Fisherman's Competition. The hero is shocked not only by such a task, but also by the fact that a simple character immediately recognized him. He decides to play along and asks what the fun would be in the competition. In response, the fisherman offers to give him the most valuable fish he caught here if the hero catches more fish than he did. However, when it comes to the reward for the old man himself, he says that he has nothing to take from the boy. As soon as the fisherman announces the start of the competition, Reagan immediately takes the first fish out of the water. In just 20 minutes, there is a whole mountain of fish lying next to the guy, while the fisherman has caught nothing. Suddenly, he even pulls out of the water not a fish, but a turtle. It turns out that this is a high-level animal, very rare prey and very useful. The old man begins to suspect that the young man is somehow cheating. But Reagan reminds him that this is his first time fishing and there is no way he could cheat so close. Suddenly, with one wave of the old man's hand, a fish jumps out of the lake. The system congratulates the guy on his victory, and he receives a special class Azure Fish as a reward. The next moment, the surface of the lake is shaken by an underwater shock. The old man advises Reagan not to fish here anymore unless he wants to die. The old man mumbles, deciding that the dragon really wanted to be caught, and his loss is the monster's fault. The system reports that Ralph the Destroyer is also angry with Reagan, causing their relationship to deteriorate. Suddenly, he remembers that he has already seen this name in the top 10 rankings of the strongest faction of the darkness. The old man sees that he has been exposed and tells that the battle between light and darkness is just the tip of the iceberg. Reagan hopes that the demon gods will intervene at some point to help, but Ralph advises against getting his hopes up. However, there is no rule that the gods of light will not interfere, since the swordsman has angered the entire faction. Before Ralph leaves, Reagan asks him to deliver something and promises that very turtle as a reward. The old man says goodbye to him and wishes that this time the dark swordsman does not die too early. The next moment, he lifts off the ground, raising dust into the air and disappears. At the same moment, the system invites Reagan to teleport to the arena to go through the third stage. The third round includes the top 100 players. To advance to the fourth round, Reagan must defeat 8 opponents. Before his battle begins, he decides to check the stats of the fish he was given. It turns out that this animal not only increases health by 100,000 once, but also restores health in battle. Suddenly, he is transported to a battle arena. A level 49th mage will recognize the tournament's dark horse and immediately activate a protective spell. Unfortunately, the ice does not save him from Reagan's incredible strength, and he wins in one blow. Suddenly, he hears the name Winter River and becomes wary that he might have been exposed somehow. But when he turns around, he sees that people have gathered around another arena. There in the ring, he sees a complete copy of himself without disguise. The double asks the enemy in an arrogant voice whether he is ready to surrender or be killed in an instant. Reagan approaches the arena and hears that the spectators notice that Winter River is acting strangely, but do not know why. The impersonator even uses a semblance of the angry march for which Reagan is famous. Just a few blows are enough to make the enemy beg for mercy and admit defeat. False Winter River addresses its viewers, for whom it broadcasts, and reminds them of the paid functions of friendship with it. Suddenly, one of the spectators, a dragon knight named Torichi, tells Reagan not to believe who is in front of them. The hero learns that Torichi himself has a rare class that can subjugate dragons. It turns out that the man met the real Winter River and understood what the dark swordsman's true skills are worth. He turns to leave, regretting that the swordsman himself is not at the tournament. Reagan, meanwhile, is seething with anger, but reminds himself that he will certainly meet his double in a duel. His battles with other participants end in victory after victory. The other players keep giving in to the imitator, and the imitator doesn't even have to try very hard. It turns out that because of the guy's resemblance to the Winter River, he was constantly driven away until they began to fear him. He decided to take advantage of this fame, and when he accidentally learned a semblance of the evil march, it became even easier to pretend. The next moment, he is transported to the arena, and in front of him he sees a strange player with a sullen expression. As usual, he offers the enemy to surrender so as not to waste energy. But the bald player confidently replies that it is not Winter River in front of him because even the nickname is written incorrectly. The other players see what he's talking about and also pick up on the idea that they are dealing with a cheater. But the pretender refuses to confess and claims that the name has always been written that way. To prove his point, he takes to the air to use Evil March. But suddenly he himself is pinned to the ground by the real Winter River, who has removed his disguise. The audience is shocked that they see 2 identical characters in front of them. The pretender, meanwhile, asks for forgiveness and offers Reagan half of what he earned by lying. But in response, the hero beheads him because he is not interested in dirty money. He then turns to those broadcasting and loudly announces that he is not collecting money from anyone. The audience believes that the real winner River is in front of them, because he has always killed his opponents with one blow under his secret guise. Immediately, Reagan receives a notification that his character's double has been blocked and that the victims will be compensated for their losses. A few minutes later, he is transported to a new arena where he meets the Dragon Knight. He is overly pleased that he finally met him and rushes into the attack. But when he gets close enough, he gets tripped by Reagan, which takes away a third of his health. Unexpectedly, Reagan asks him to add each other as friends because he is interested in his secret class. The knight agrees, but is still trying to recover from the damage he took. Having gotten what she wanted, Winter River offers to talk after the tournament and finishes him off with one blow. After the fight, he returns to the lake, whose surface still looks restless. He remembers the old man's words about the dragon imprisoned there, and apologizes for not being able to free it. Unexpectedly, Ralph flies to him and announces that he has fulfilled the agreement. In gratitude, Reagan invites him into town to eat Thunder Turtle. In the city, skilled cooks prepare the catch and serve it to the mayor's table. Thanks to the treat, Ralph becomes kinder to Reagan. The hero tastes the juicy meat and his attack immediately increases forever, as well as his ability to control the elements. After dinner, the old man thanks everyone and promises the boy that he will look after him. While searching for new ways to level up, Reagan finds a goblin forest. It doesn't take long before he stumbles upon its inhabitants. Unlike other games, goblins here turn out to be elite monsters. They're also joined by their king, the Dark Gold tier boss. With all their might, they rush to attack the hero. They exchange several blows, but the agile hero tries not to get caught. Eventually, he activates War March, which finishes off all the previously wounded goblins. For defeating the Goblin King, Reagan gains a new level and reputation. Following this, he turns his attention to the artifacts that dropped after the goblin's death. The first find is an axe, which has impressive characteristics and 2 enchantments. Also on the ground, the hero finds a book on strengthening pets and a treasure map. The map turns out to be of a special class and generous treasures to those who follow the instructions. The first thing Reagan decides to do is find out about the place where the treasure map invites him. The Fallen Fortress turns out to be a city of the Dark faction, ruled by the 4th most powerful demonic goddess. Before heading there, the hero decides to strengthen his steed. Thanks to this, the animal becomes a spiritual rank boss. After that, they go to the city. It takes the guy about half an hour to get to the Fallen Fortress, the walls of which turn out to be terribly high. Even using his abilities, the hero can't jump high enough. Eventually, he uses his hands to climb up. The city is guarded by guards, but Reagan decides that it is not worth catching their eye. After 5 minutes of wandering in the shadows, he finds the city mayor's building. The hero decides to act cunningly and gets inside through the window, not through the door. Unfortunately, he is unlucky and ends up right in the room of the fallen angel Scylla. He introduces himself as a dark swordsman, a representative of the dark faction, and asks for help. He says that a treasure map led him here. Scylla gives him a chance to look for the treasure, but warns him that if he is deceived, she will not forgive him. Reagan remembers the coordinates that were given in the assignment and begins to dig with just his sword. Half an hour later, a huge hole appears in the middle of the room. By this time, the angel becomes bored and asks Reagan how he would like to die. But suddenly his sword hits something. From the ground, the hero takes out an unusual crystal of divine level. The system suggests that it is needed to enhance weapons. Unexpectedly, Scylla snatches the find from his hands and already anticipates how she can improve her soldiers. Reagan looks out of the hole and reminds that this is his treasure. In exchange for the crystal, Scylla gives him a feather from her wing. According to the system, this artifact gives the player the ability to fly for 30 minutes. Reagan thanks the angel and promises that he will do everything to defeat Uriel. But she replies that there is no reason for gratitude, since it is simply an equal exchange. After this, she says that she is tired and drives the hero away. She hits him with her wing and he flies right out of her window. Reagan returns to the city to find Fakey drilling his soldiers for the approaching battle. He shows the orc the axe he has obtained and offers him a new weapon. He immediately evaluates the weapon as very good, confident that it will help him. However, he has no opportunity to buy it because the previous mayor left the city and its residents without money. Then the hero offers to exchange something, and Fakey remembers about the relic. He takes out a time bead from his pocket, which he planned to use later. Reagan learns that this artifact permanently reduces the cooldown of the skill by as much as half. He agrees to the exchange, but the orc does not look pleased. Fakey says that he would have given the bead away just like that if it weren't for the rules of this world. Here the system reminds us of a fair and equal exchange. Then Reagan offers to sign a contract under which he will give the orc something of equal value in 2 months. He also suggests that he take the axe as a gift, since they have a battle coming up. After this exchange, the hero decides to go to the Goblin Forest again to level up. But first, he decides to use the time bead to strengthen his war march. Thanks to this buff, the skill activation time has been reduced again to 30 seconds. Reagan takes off and gallops into the woods to test his new skill. Finding the goblins is no problem, and he activates War March against them. The hero is pleased with the result because his skill now recovers faster than a new batch of enemies appears. The fourth stage of the tournament begins the next day. Based on the results of this day, the 10 strongest will be selected. The hero's first opponent is the King of Thieves, whom he has already met before. He skillfully uses his talent to strike again without being noticed. But Reagan only activates the War March in the arena and the enemy is defeated. The second opponent turns out to be a girl magician. When she appears in the arena, she bows her head. Reagan acknowledges that it is difficult to rush into battle with such respectable opponents. But suddenly the magician activates soul control on the distracted Reagan. His limbs are bound by a spell. The sorceress is already beginning to celebrate her victory because she is the first one who is able to defeat the Winter River here. Reagan laughs menacingly at the girl's very confidence. The next second, he frees himself from the bonds and strikes a blow that immediately kills the sorceress. After the battle, there is a break, and while the system chooses the next opponent for the hero, he decides to inspect the arenas. On one of them, he comes across a strange sight, a man in armor against a half-naked man. It turns out that the swordsman in underwear also has a hidden role. Despite his size, he turns out to be very agile. The audience is not surprised that the leader of the God Hunter Guild shows such results. One of the guys admires the fighter's strength and hopes that he will be paired with the Winter River. Unexpectedly for him, the hero recognizes him, because they had already met during the battle for the City of Darkness. Immediately, the audience's attention is completely riveted on Reagan. Calibus of Wine shouts to him that he was really looking forward to meeting him and asks him not to disappoint him. Reagan assures him that he will do everything in his power not to let the man down. Suddenly, the system informs that the hero's battle is about to begin. But it takes him to the arena to an old familiar player. He only sighs because he realizes that he's going to lose the fight. But the only thing he asks is not to underestimate the leader of the Hunters Guild. After this, he gives up and leaves the arena. Reagan decides to find out the details later, after he completes this stage of the competition. This is followed by other battles, which the hero also wins with one blow of a weapon. Within a few hours, he is transported back to the forest. The system asks him to prepare for the final stage. Unfortunately, after searching for information about Calibas's wine, he does not find any useful information for the fight. Since the information won't help him, he decides to get resources to ensure victory and takes out a treasure map. 15 minutes later, he already finds that very treasure, having dug it up simply with his sword. The reward for your efforts are high-quality companion stones, which are used to catch pets. Although the hero does not see any benefit from such a prize, it is better than nothing. He decides to fight some boss in order to gain experience more effectively and level up. The closest of the bosses turns out to be the Hermit Martin of spiritual rank. No player has ever defeated a spirit rank boss before, and Reagan wants to be the first. After 40 minutes of riding on horseback, he finally finds the hermit. He sleeps right on the ground, not paying attention to his surroundings. The hero is amazed that a monster of such a rank has only 5 attack units and absolutely no defense. He still decides to fight the boss and eats turtle meat before attacking to increase his stats. Riding the beast, he uses War March to drain Martin's health. But suddenly the boss uses a skill, thanks to which he doubles the damage and returns it to Reagan, killing the steed. He hits the monster again with his sword. But this attack also comes back to him. In response, Martin activates a skill that increases his attack to incredible levels. Reagan activates his defensive skills, but unexpectedly the monster's attack only deals 1 point of damage to him. Insulted by this deception, he uses Bone-Crushing Strike to slow Martin down. And all this in order to escape from such an absurd boss and find someone better. But suddenly the enemy simply falls to the ground and falls asleep. A couple of hours later, the hero discovers that he himself has fallen asleep under the influence of his skill. Reagan decides to change strategy and begins to shame Martin for his laziness. Unexpectedly, this brings results. The hermit is a master at avoiding physical fights, but is vulnerable to mental ones. Soon the system congratulates Reagan on his victory over Martin. He gains a new level and is glad that he learned about such a technique earlier. The hermit leaves artifacts on the ground, including a skill book. It turns out that it can be used to deceive an opponent by creating a fictitious legend to deceive them. Reagan is obviously upset, as he would have preferred other skills from Martin. The boss also dropped a cloak and a staff of Heavenly Spring, which increases all characteristics. Reagan recalls that Fakey's sister has a role suitable for using such a weapon. He also received the blessing of the God of War for his first victory over a boss of this level. With it, you can improve any skill without restrictions. Reagan immediately activates the scroll and decides to improve the military march. Thus, the guy becomes the first to receive a third-class special skill. After this, he heads back to the city to meet Fakey. Reagan immediately notices the progress in the orc's technique thanks to the new axe. The orc tells the boy where to look for his sister when he asks. The hero says that he found an interesting staff and wants to offer it to Liz. Fakey gets upset and asks not to take all the artifacts from his family, but the guy assures that he just wants to help. He meets Liz further down the road as she is learning to use her healing magic. She is very happy to see him. Reagan takes out his staff and offers her a trade. In exchange, Liz offers him a scroll that allows him to go back in time for a few minutes. But she offers him the treasure simply as a gift because she wants him and her brother to be safe. But Reagan refuses to take advantage of her kindness and still insists that he will repay for the scroll in the future. He still gives her the staff as a gift. In exchange, she decides to tell him about her hidden talent. It turns out that even at level 10, she is already a bronze rank boss with incredible stats. In addition, she ignores all the limitations of the staff and is already using it to increase Reagan's characteristics. The hero realizes that he has saved the one who can become the demon god in the future. The next day, at exactly 10 in the morning, the 5th round of the tournament begins. Reagan is transported to the stands, where both spectators and participants are seated. Within a few minutes, the system selects the first competitors. A player named Carnage, who has the role of a holy knight, is also the head of one of the guilds. Reagan learns that this is about the guild, at whose expense he once carried out a mission to kill 1,000 players. Pretty soon, as expected, Carnage wins, landing just one simple blow. The hero decides that he needs to be careful with him because the man didn't use a single skill. The guy himself is called to participate in the second fight. He is opposed by a player named Phantom, who takes the role of a thief. He proves to be very agile, and in an instant is behind Reagan to strike. But the hero is not simple either. He deftly dodges the blow, sensing the enemy. The Phantom once again uses his incredible speed to confuse Reagan. In response, he activates the skill Dead Man's Grip to stop the enemy. He then decapitates the Phantom with one blow. After this, Reagan is transported back to the stands. Unfortunately, the subsequent fights do not look particularly impressive. But then Calabas Vina enters the arena. This is the kind of player that instantly attracts Reagan's attention to the fight. Meanwhile, the Fire Mage uses a fire tornado as his first attack. But the next moment, one blow of Calabas Wine's sword decapitates him. Everyone is surprised that the man did not receive any damage while in the spell's area of effect. Reagan begins to worry because he still hasn't figured out the warrior's secret and is afraid that he will escape damage from his skills. But suddenly a voice sounds right in his head. It turns out to be Lewis, the previous dark swordsman. He left a seal on the armor to watch Reagan. The ghost admits that he is tired of the hero's slow-wittedness and has come to give advice. As Lewis disappears, he orders the boy to carefully read the description of the dark resurrection skill. The next second, Reagan is back in the arena. This time, he is opposed by the Knight Slaughter, who clearly has not forgotten how the hero treated his people. But suddenly, Reagan opens the description of the skill, hoping to find a hidden meaning that he had not noticed before. The audience is shocked that he so rudely ignores his opponent. The knight can't stand it any longer and rushes into attack. He also activates a skill that increases the attack. But suddenly he is stopped in his tracks by Reagan's Dead Man's Grip. While Carnage is immobilized, the hero begins to deliver a series of blows. After the attack is over, the knight has only half health left. In response, he attacks Reagan with his spear, taking away quite a lot of health points. The guy praises him, but the next moment he uses the skill Bonebreaker. After this, he decapitates Carnage with one blow of his sword. Then a fight occurs between the other two participants. But it doesn't take long before Reagan is called back into the arena. This time, his opponent will be Calabas Vina himself, who bears the title of the Shadow of God. Suddenly, the man asks to be added as a friend. Reagan apologizes and complies with his request. After this, Calabas Vin activates the skill God of War, which increases his characteristics. He rushes towards Reagan to attack. The hero is already prepared for this and activates Intimidation, but the system counts the attack as a miss. He immediately uses Dead Man's Grip, but Wine's Calabash avoids it too. The warrior turned out to be quicker than Reagan thought and attacked him from behind. However, the guy himself deftly avoids the attack. Reagan decides to use a surefire tactic and jumps up to activate the War March. But Calabas Vina avoids this attack too. While Reagan is in disbelief, the man strikes him with a blow that deals over 2,000 damage. The guy attacks back, but the system also counts this blow as a miss. The whole situation reminds Reagan of a battle with a giant snake, but he refuses to give up and run away. Calabas rushes to attack, but suddenly a strange energy engulfs the hero. The system informs him that for his fighting spirit, his talent Dark Resurrection develops the passive skill Enemy Crush. Meanwhile, the enemy raises his sword and demands that the hero not be distracted from the battle. Wine's calabash begins to move at incredible speeds, but this time it moves slower for Reagan. So at the moment when the man is close enough, the hero strikes him. Buoyed by the improved situation, Reagan goes on the attack. He uses Dead Man's grip, but suddenly the gilt calabash appears behind him. Reagan notices and counterattacks, but the cunning enemy activates the peace treaty skill. Thanks to this skill, the hero cannot strike until the man himself attacks first. He realizes that Reagan has understood the passive skill of his role. In parallel, he activates the skill Death Force. The man talks about the complex system of activating his passive skill, but does not give details. The next moment, he rushes to attack Reagan. The hero activates Dark Flame Armor to increase his defense. Seeing this, Calabas Vina runs around him, trying to catch the moment to attack. But this time, Reagan manages to use Dead Man's grip, which immobilizes the man. The hero deals him a series of blows until he cannot move. At the end, he jumps up to use War March. Calabas Vina understands that he can be killed, and having gained control over his body, escapes. Unfortunately, he turns out to be slower than usual, so Reagan easily catches up with him. Then with one blow of his sword, he finishes off his opponent. After this, battles between other participants continue to take place in the arena. Calabash of Wine and the guild leader also meet in a duel. As expected, the former wins. Reagan is next in the arena, and he too will be fighting the Knight of Carnage. The hero's first attack is Military March, which pins the man to the ground. With one swing of his sword, he finishes off his enemy. The last fight will be his and Calabas's fault, and Reagan decides to prepare. When the man appears in the arena, he finds a guy without armor, just like himself. Reagan realized that speed increased without armor, and wanted the fight to be private on both sides. Calabash runs away, but the guy has become so fast that he's immediately caught by Dead Man's grip. He charges forward, ready to use War March, but suddenly Calabash activates Peace Treaty. Unfortunately for him, the attack was too fast for him to block all the damage. He takes damage and counterattacks. Reagan doesn't stand still and dodges, closing the distance between them. As he approaches, he jumps up, surprising the man. He clearly didn't expect that it would take so little time to recharge the skill. After pinning Vin's calabash to the ground, the hero uses lightning-fast sword strikes. Soon the system announces the winner of the duel, Winter River. Reagan knows that the next fight will be with Calabasas to consolidate the victory. But suddenly the system tells him that the man has given up, and the tournament is awarded to him. The stands scream about the unfairness of the fight and demand that Reagan's overly strong skills be banned. Calabas Vina, meanwhile, writes to the hero so that he considers this a favor in his favor. The system also offers him to choose a reward, and he decides to choose a ring. Continuing to hear the public's discontent, he makes a rude gesture to them and invites them to tomorrow's battle. After this, he is transported back to the forest. As a reward, he receives the Heart Ring, which increases attack and grants the special skill Brave Heart. Another reward is a book with the skill Broken Stars, which increases attack by 500%. Reagan checks his stats. Over 8 million health points in a powerful attack. He concludes that he has done everything possible to prepare for tomorrow's battle. The next day, at 9:30 in the morning, the system announces the start of the city defense mission. All the fighters of the city are gathered to build a defense. Reagan will be the final boss of the fight. Fakey reports that only the church fighters will oppose them, since no one else wanted to fight. Despite this, Reagan sees a huge army lined up at the city walls. He asks the ogre to stay within the city walls, closer to him, so as not to die. But he replies that he simply cannot leave his people to their fate. Then the guy announces that he will take care of everything himself and protect the city and its inhabitants. Fakey is impressed by his speech and hands over control of the army to him. Suddenly, a notification comes that the battle has begun and the army of the Light faction is going to attack. Reagan immediately gives orders to his subordinates, both ordinary soldiers and archers. While the first ones fight at close range, the archers shoot at the attackers from a distance. Suddenly, Captain Baker kills one of the men, which causes Olga, the healer, to react. She starts the second wave of defense and heals several of the fallen. But Baker kills them just as easily as the first time. Following this, he kills the healer. Fakey sighs because he suspected that this would happen. He was supposed to go next. But suddenly Reagan asks him to stop because he himself wants to kill the captain. The orc accepts his decision and orders the soldiers to stay behind. He himself decides to stand guard at the entrance to the city, killing everyone who comes close. Gradually, the people who get closer die at his hands, creating a pile of tetas on the ground. After 20 minutes, Reagan decides it's time for them to switch places and calls Fakey back. But he replies that he can't because the system doesn't let him. The hero is shocked and assumes that this must be a scripted death. But he doesn't intend to sit and watch. The hero goes down to protect Fakey. The orc warns the boy that he will be punished for entering the battle too early, but Reagan is not bothered. A moment later, they finish off Baker together. Alf comes forward to replace him. The knight leads his squad into attack. Reagan asks Fakey to guard the gate while he takes care of the boss. Having saddled his horse, he rides out of the city. Getting close enough to the enemy soldiers, he uses War March, killing several. Knight Alf finds himself under the hooves of a donkey. The guy finishes him off with one swing of his sword. Not a minute passes before the third boss, Asa, is eager to fight. But the first thing Reagan does is use the War March against him. After this, the damage that the knight deals to him turns out to be negligible. His soldiers are moving forward to defend him. Reagan decides to seize the moment and uses the military march again to gain a new level. After 40 minutes of fighting, he gets the 73rd one and his health is restored. Meanwhile, Ace was down to only half his health and several waves of his soldiers were killed. The knight knows that he cannot retreat because of Uriel, and therefore he has only one path, to attack. This time the hero decides to use Broken Stars together with Bonebreaker. This attack takes away 225,000 health from the knight. But suddenly the knight does not die but simply falls to the ground. Reagan is amazed that the game mechanics allow you to break armor and cut off a limb without killing the character. With weakened attacks, defense, and a missing limb, Asa is simply an easy target for him. Getting closer, he begins to strike with his sword. Eventually, one of the blows finishes off the knight. The system reports the beginning of the fourth wave of attack, led by Nudia. But suddenly, Uriel himself decides to intervene. The system reports that this happened because Reagan interrupted the summoning ritual. With lightning speed, the angel appears in front of the hero, grabbing him by the neck. He activates the soul-beating skill on him, which reduces defense and increases the sensation of pain. With one blow, he takes away more than 700,000 health from the guy. The hero is shocked at how much his pain has increased and realizes that he is losing consciousness from shock. The Archangel, meanwhile, continues to strike him with blow after blow. When Reagan has a small fraction of health left, Uriel lifts him off the ground to finish him off. But suddenly, Fakey bursts into the battle. In response, the angel shoots energy from his eyes at him, taking away more than 5 million health. After that, he finishes off the orc with a kick. The system announces the character's death. Reagan is shocked by the death of his close friend, and through the power of rage, begins to rise from the ground. Uriel turns around to see Reagan activating the scroll, even on the brink of death. The scroll turns out to be an artifact that can turn back time. Soon Reagan, still healthy, realizes that he has gone back in time more than a minute, just as an angel was rushing towards him. To dodge, he removes his mount and falls to the ground. The unsuspecting angel is shocked by the hero's reaction speed. Suddenly, Reagan throws a scroll at him. Upon catching him, the angel realizes that he holds the finale contract, which requires a duel to the death. Even after realizing that the angel is far superior to him in everything, Reagan still challenges him to a fight. Although Uriel is offended by his tone, he cannot decide whether he should accept such an offer. The guy sees that the angel is doubting and tears up another scroll. The next moment, his teacher, Cheryl, appears nearby. He sees that the battle will be with an angel and is ready to protect his student. Since Uriel is much weaker than the swordsman, Colvin appears on the battlefield to assist the angel. But unexpectedly for Cheryl, Reagan asks him to summon the demon god. When the teacher objects, the boy smiles and assures that chaos will only help their situation. Cheryl decides to trust him and tears up the summoning scroll. Colvin shouts at him that the demon god will not bring victory to any of them. Just a few moments later, a gap appears in the sky above the city, and Lore appears from there. Reagan immediately offers him a battle in 2 years if he helps him defeat his enemies. Lore agrees that 2 strong souls from the church are more useful to him than a small dark swordsman. But suddenly someone else turns to the demon god. Immediately, someone powerful lands from the sky to the earth. Immediately, all the churchmen fall down in bow, and the Pope descends to them. He scolds Lore for betraying the light faction and helping the villains. Reagan intervenes and offers to solve everything more simply and with less bloodshed, so that Uriel accepts his challenge. Everyone is shocked that the guy would go so far to push an angel into a duel. The Pope surprisingly agrees with the hero and asks him to take care of the dark swordsman. The angel complies and signs the contract. Cheryl warns that without understanding the role, Reagan has no chance. But he simply leaves, declaring that he's not afraid to die if he doesn't get out. The guy is sure that he finally understood what the meaning of the battle for this territory was. As soon as he gets close, Uriel uses soul beating, which weakens the hero and increases the feeling of pain. But Reagan himself, meanwhile, eats a piece of turtle and activates Scylla's feather to be able to fly. An angel flies up to him and asks him not to hope that such tricks will help him win. With one blow, he takes away 750,000 health from the hero. He then follows up with another attack that takes away over 3.5 million health. Reagan realizes that not only has he lost the ability to think from the pain, but he is also unable to fight back. Uriel attacks him again and orders him to bow down. He holds out with his last strength and on his last units of health because he cannot abandon his friends. Uriel hits him again, finally knocking him to the ground. Feki even tries to move from his place to come to the rescue, but the system simply does not give him such an opportunity. Players agree that such a battle was too brutal for the game. The angel turns and walks away, admitting that Reagan had scared him for a second at first with his confidence. But suddenly the Pope stands before him, because the battle is not over yet. Uriel turns around and sees Reagan, surrounded by dark energy, beginning to rise from the ground. Surprisingly, his theory about the secret skill of his role was confirmed. The description of Dark Rebirth spoke of a connection between the life and death of the swordsman. But it turns out that this skill is also activated at the moment of death, increasing all indicators by 50%. The angel himself is shocked that the Dark Swordsman possesses such a skill. At this time, Reagan is already running at full speed to attack him, raising his sword. This time, Uriel almost kills him just as easily. But Reagan activates his skill again, causing his stats to increase by 100%. The angel flaps its wings and rises into the sky, again attacking the hero with an energy beam from its eyes. But this time the guy rises from the ground. His skill has increased his stats by 150%. He flies up to Uriel and strikes him with his sword, which this time deals significant damage. After this, they begin to exchange blows. The angel is surprised that his health is declining much faster than he planned. He sends his spear at Reagan, which finishes the guy off. But he only continues to be resurrected and return to battle stronger. Now the guy has become the one who orders Uriel to bow and attacks him with the War March. The angel finds himself pinned to the ground, unable to rise, but then the hero's blade plunges into his back. To make him feel the pain fully, Reagan rips out his wings. Feeling the approach of death, the angel reaches out to the Pope for salvation, but even he cannot intervene in the duel. The next second, Uriel's head is pierced by the guy's sword. Their duel ends with Reagan winning. The system congratulates him as the player who was the first to kill such a strong character. But the hero remembers that the battle for the city is not over yet and flies to the entrance to the fortress. There, Fakey fights off the attackers with all his might. Reagan descends from the skies, casting War March on nearby enemies and ordering the orc to retreat. He himself decides to stay outside the city and kill the boss. At this time, Nydia stands in the middle of the enemy soldiers, strengthening them with magic. With one blow, the hero pins her to the ground, immobilizing her. He then cuts off her head with one blow. Suddenly, the system reports that his shadow armor has expired. The effect of dark reincarnation also ends, and as a price for the strengthening, he is deprived of 50 levels. At this time, enemy soldiers notice the hero's unusual fatigue. The next moment, the first fighters are already running towards him with an attack, wanting to finish off the wanted player. Suddenly, he receives a notification that he can use the scroll Dragon's Blessing. This item increases all stats, and Reagan decides to use it immediately. The next moment, a cloud of blue energy enters his forehead. He also decides to learn the skill that he was given as a reward for defeating Uriel, Robber's Hand. It allows you to learn any enemy skill without any restrictions. Reagan decides to call his old friend Calabasas Wine, who is sure to show up for this battle. He immediately jumps forward, ready to strike. But unexpectedly for the man, the hero puts his hand forward and sucks the knowledge of the skill out of him. Thanks to the Robber's Hand, he decides to borrow the talent God of War. At the same second, the rest of the players rush to attack him. But Reagan has already unlocked the talent's hidden passive ability, Hermes' power, and runs past them like lightning. Despite the level decrease, his skills are still there, and now he only needs a little to level up. The hero rushes back into the crowd of players and attacks them. In just a moment, his level is increased. To enhance the effect, he also uses March to hit as many enemies as possible at once. He continues to kill opponents one after another, not paying attention to leveling up. But suddenly, his death gate is interrupted by Calabas Vin, who throws him back with a blow of his sword. But in response, Reagan turns around and runs back to the ordinary soldiers, killing them along the way. Although Venus Calabash hit him, he will easily recover his health, leveling up. Understanding his tactics, Tim orders his men to retreat so that Reagan does not gain any more experience. The man immediately activates his other ability, God's Descent, and all his allies receive some of his talents. Reagan sees this as just an opportunity to get more talent. As a result, he himself gains the ability God's Descent. The hero immediately activates the skill, and it increases his attack by 60%, and he gains the power of the God of Death. But it turns out that the skill also increased the scale of his attack. He attacks them with the skill's Broken Stars. Immediately, his level jumps by 9. The hero realizes that he has received the potentially most powerful skill and decides not to change it for now. He continues to kill the soldiers one by one as he moves backwards. Soon he catches up with Calabash of Wine and decides to take revenge on him for his desire to kill. The man realizes that Reagan is now too strong for him to fight and decides to run away. But not even a couple of seconds pass before the guy catches up with him and pins him to the ground. Calabash snaps at him to remember the favor he owes him. Reagan replies that he remembers and kills the enemy. Immediately his level jumps to 63. Now he has no serious enemies left and he decides to take on the small soldiers. After a few dozen minutes, they realize that fighting Reagan has again become pointless. They decide to retreat so as not to be an easy experience for the guy. After this, Reagan breaks back into the city, and Marsham destroys the soldiers who have already approached the city. He shouts at Fakey to go and rest. Advancing deftly between the remaining invaders, he destroys them with sword strikes. Soon the system congratulates him on his successful defense of the city and gives him a reward for the victory. But suddenly a powerful wave of energy appears on the horizon. It turns out that Uriel's body has become too strong to hold the 9 pearls. The priests quickly run away because it is becoming too dangerous here. Reagan recalls hearing about the pearls when they discuss Daniel's death. Looking closely, he sees those same pearls in the sky. But the next second, they fall to the ground. The system announces the beginning of the second part of Infinity, Betrayal of Justice. Cheryl arrives to praise the student. He announces that it is time for him to return, but Reagan asks him to stay. The guy decides to ask the swordsman about the 9 pearls. He confirms that these artifacts are life energy that allows the necromancer to be reborn. Cheryl advises Reagan to focus on training for now and not get distracted by things like this. Finally, he asks to take a closer look at the necklace that helped kill Uriel. The guy opens his inventory and sees that the necklace Faith and Oath has turned into just Faith. He suspects that Fakey's death may have triggered the activation of the artifact. The hero also notices that Lore has disappeared without even doing anything. First, he decides to look at the reward he received for the entire battle. One of the rewards is the Unrivaled Diamond, which allows the hero to combine 2 roles into one. After defeating the angel, he was given the opportunity to change roles and now decided to take advantage of the offer. Suddenly, an incredible pain pierces his body, as if 2 forces are fighting inside him. Wings sprout from his back and Reagan musters the strength to remain conscious. It took about 10 minutes to completely combine the 2 roles into one. Now the role of Winter River is Angel of the End. This role also has as many as 62 stars. Also, along with the change of role, many of the hero's skills rose to a new level of power and received a new name. He also receives a bunch of artifacts as a reward, including Uriel's cape. When put on, it changes its appearance to match Reagan's character and also adds speed to movement. But before he can take it off, the system simply turns off. The dive helmet alerts Reagan to his fatigue level and advises him to take an 8-hour break. Around 11 o'clock in the evening, he's awakened by a call from Jay, who enthusiastically talks about the hype surrounding the Winter River. They arrange a meeting at one of the restaurants with tables outside to discuss everything. Together, they celebrate the hero's success in the game, as he has become a world-famous player. Around 9 in the morning, Reagan returns to the game. He looks at his body and decides to find a blacksmith to create armor. New armor costs a pretty penny, but he doesn't want to walk around defenseless. Suddenly, Fakey runs up to him to thank him for saving the city. The hero replies that he now needs to move on so that the players don't terrorize the townspeople because of him. After driving several kilometers, Reagan recalls that he did not really get a good look at the armor that fell from the angel. But he is interrupted by the dragon rider Tarichi. It turns out the knight needs help in obtaining the ingredient, and the guy happily agrees. Arriving at the coordinates, he meets Tarichi, who is very surprised by Reagan's speed. He also offers the hero to share the reward for the task with him by joining. After reading the assignment, the guy understands that he will have to meet a dragon that lives at the bottom of the lake. Since the knight is too weak to defeat all the monsters on the way through the mountains, he asks Reagan about it. He readily takes out his sword and asks Tarichi to lead the way. There are monsters circling around the required mountain, lava vultures, which need to be killed. Reagan loses a little confidence when he sees the monster's incredibly high stats. The next moment, one blow from the monster kills Tarichi. The hero understands why he was called. When the knight returns, Reagan is already in full swing killing vultures. To prevent the birds from dealing thousands of damage, he activates destroying armor. After 10 minutes, Tarichi suddenly levels up due to his alliance with Reagan. He transfers $1 million to the guy's personal account and promises a reward for each subsequent level. An hour later, Reagan effectively clears the area. The knight suggests that he go further, but the hero tells him about powerful armor that requires a higher level. Hearing this, Tarichi decides to get the armor, and they begin to negotiate the price, but all ready for a different set. When Reagan gains his level, he enjoys looking at the result of combining artifacts and armor. Tarichi in turn receives a dragon set. After this, they decide to climb further up the mountain, but suddenly they see unusual monsters in the sky. The monsters turn out to be level 102 lava butterflies. Just like last time, Reagan takes on the monsters while the knight keeps a safe distance. After winning, they continue their journey upward until they come across the heart of lava. Reagan wants to pick the plant, but suddenly the mysterious salesman, a regular character in the game, gets ahead of him. Unexpectedly, he refuses the plant because the level of the artifact is too insignificant for him. Instead, the seller offers the guy to make a deal on other items. Reagan is presented with a vendor's inventory filled with valuable items, no less than immortal rank. Even Torichi is shocked by the price of the goods because even he is not that rich, although he bought his role. The mysterious seller knows that none of them can afford any of his goods. That's why he offers Reagan to exchange a fragment of the moon for one of his artifacts. Reagan asks if he can refuse, but the salesman begins to insist. Just at that moment, something lands from the sky behind him. An old fisherman approaches the heroes menacingly and orders them not to force a deal on the players. He, sensing an aura that far surpasses his own, leaves, apologizing tensely. But suddenly, Reagan asks him to stop because he has not yet decided whether he wants to buy or not. The seller tries to escape, but the old man orders him not to violate the terms of trade and sell the goods to the guy at a discount. The mysterious salesman irritably opens the inventory, reducing prices by 50 to 10%. The hero buys the cheapest goods because that's all he can afford. After this, the seller quickly leaves, ordering everyone to keep quiet about the discount. Reagan sincerely thanks the demon god for his help. He replies that he didn't come just to help. It turns out that Charles, the dragon protector, is going to free the dragon at the bottom of the lake so that it will belong to the light faction. But the demon gods decided to send two brave heroes to change the course of the situation. Unexpectedly, these very heroes turn out to be Winter River and Torichi. To make the man agree faster, the old man gives the hero a ring that contains 100 million gold coins. According to him, Charles loves money more than his life, and bribing him will not be a problem. After this, God says goodbye to them and wishes good luck to both of them. After crossing the mountains, the guys find themselves in front of a city of the light faction, where Torichi wants to make a lava pearl. To enter the city safely, Reagan again uses the identity concealment spell. While the knight is busy with his own affairs, the hero decides to go shopping. He quickly finds the auction house where the most valuable items are usually sold. Reagan decides to sell items that have no value to him in the game planet. He also decides to pay attention to books with light skills, which he would not have otherwise obtained. In the end, he chooses the Tier 3 skill, Light Defense. After this, they meet with Torichi near the portal for movement. In just a moment, they find themselves at the lake where the dragon is imprisoned. Unexpectedly, on the shore, they meet that same Charles, the protector of dragons. The knight hurries to the teacher to give him the pearl. The system congratulates the guys on completing the task. As soon as he receives the artifact, he throws it into the water. Here, the water level drops significantly. Suddenly, Charles points his sword at Reagan and asks what the Dark Swordsman is doing here. He shows the ring and says that he comes in peace. The artifact immediately ends up in the hands of the dragon defender, and his friendliness towards the hero increases. Reagan reveals that he would like the dragon from the lake to join the light faction, but Charles explains that the dark faction does not have the necessary resources to maintain such a beast. The dragons are currently supported by the light faction, but he promises to think again if all conditions are met. After this, Charles invites Torichi to take a look at the skills that are available for purchase. While the guy is thinking about what to do, Reagan decides to ask the dragon protector for information about the mission. He is already convinced of the man's greed, and therefore immediately gives him a bag of gold coins. Charles reveals that the sword Reagan wields has become dull, and that only the dwarves can help him. But when the hero asks where to find them, Charles even refuses the money, because he doesn't know. While Torichi is busy with his affairs, the hero decides to set off on a journey. While riding his steed, he scours forums and the internet for information about gnomes. He even thinks about visiting the goddess of swords. But suddenly Torichi calls him and tells him about a visionary player who can help them. The player ignores all attempts to contact him, so Reagan has to meet him in person. After leaving the forest, he tears up the scroll to summon Cheryl. Reagan briefly describes the situation with the dragon when it appears. Surprisingly, the teacher still does not rule out the possibility of the existence of gnomes. He calls on his dark Pegasus to get to the desired city faster together with Reagan. Together they soar into the air. Suddenly, while flying over the forest, the Pegasus begins to behave strangely and descend. Among the trees, they see a puppy who is persistently digging the ground. The puppy's name is Kai, and he turns out to be a magical animal who is obsessed with finding treasure. Cheryl is going to catch this puppy because he can be very useful. Unfortunately, even a blow from a character like him doesn't reach the target. The puppy is too fast. The dog ends up on Reagan's shoulder, angry at Cheryl. Reagan decides to take advantage of the situation and try to grab the puppy with the help of the pet stone, but it turns out to be in vain. In response to this, Kai hits him in the face with his paw, stealing fish from his inventory. The hero uses his skill to copy the puppy's empty hand skill. After this, he hits him back, stealing the skill book from him. So they continue to hit each other in the face, stealing things from each other. Cheryl even wants to intervene, but Reagan refuses. The hero is sure that they cannot just leave this animal like that. He continues to fight Kai, effectively trading his items for much more valuable ones. Eventually, one hit will take away the divine rancor from the puppy. Instantly, he becomes very hostile towards him. Reagan decides to throw him off his shoulder immediately, completing the exchange. The animal charges at full speed, but Cheryl gets ahead of it. The swordsman erects a protective dome right in front of the puppy's nose. After this, Reagan and the teacher teleport to another part of the forest. Cheryl guesses that the student stole something very expensive from the animal. In response, the guy shows him a piece of ore, an obsidian crystal. The swordsman suggests that the apprentice save this artifact and offer it to the dwarves in order to earn their friendship. After that, they set off on their journey again on Pegasus. During the flight, Reagan checks what items he got from the magic puppy. But the first thing they decide to go to is not the city of the seer, but the city of Shirilla. The system immediately assigns Reagan to the city. The hero understands that if he has to defend such a large city, this battle will not be easy. After visiting the city, the guy decides to go to the seer, and for this he contacts Torichi. In just half an hour, he leaves for the city of the moon, where the player who can help lives. As soon as he appears in the city, players are shocked to see Winter River himself here. Several players block his path and remind him that this is not welcoming territory for him. In response, Reagan uses March, killing several players at once. The hero understands that they don't yet know what such a high rank as his means for battle. Naturally, the commotion attracts the attention of the local mayor, Fatal Rose, who is the seer the hero is looking for. Reagan immediately lays his cards on the table and asks her for a prediction. But she only laughs at his naivety because she would never help a player from another region, much less a faction. In response to this, Reagan decides to steal her prediction skills. Unfortunately, the system does not allow this because her role is unique to the game and cannot be duplicated. Left with no options, he tries to offer her his help in exchange for a prediction. But she refuses and advises him to solve his problems himself. Reagan advises her not to mock him and takes a swing to strike. He specifically targeted another character to demonstrate his power to Fatal Rose. After killing one of her men, he asks her for help again, but she refuses and Reagan kills her. In half an hour, he kills all the players who were here. The system offers him to occupy this city. After a couple of minutes, players begin to respawn and learn that their city has been occupied. Soon, Reagan receives a general message that Fatal Rose is inviting all players to retake their city. The next moment, one of the players attacks the hero, but he deftly dodges. One blow in response is enough to kill the attacker. Other players also arrive who would like to kill the famous Winter River. But the very next moment, nothing remains of them from the hero's hand. He approaches the entrance to the city because he is sure that these were not the last enemies. And indeed, a whole army of players is already approaching the city. The next moment, thousands of arrows fly into the sky. Reagan uses his boost to avoid the arrows and charges forward. With one blow, he kills several people at once. He keeps everyone else at bay with ranged sword attacks. But suddenly a rider on a huge wolf rushes past, which almost hits him. It turns out to be the Snow Emperor, the best player in this region with a unique hidden role. Suddenly the system informs Reagan that the player used the steal skill to copy his skill. But the next moment the guy is already rushing into the attack and March knocks the enemy to the ground. Reagan also uses his ability to immobilize the Snow Emperor for a full 3 seconds. After this, he begins to scold him and even slaps him, while stealing the ice sword from the man. Reagan then pushes him away and kills the region's most powerful player with one blow. Immediately, the captain of the army commands to release arrows. While Reagan is distracted, one of the players stabs him with a blade. The player uses a skill that immobilizes the hero for a split second. But this is enough for some of the arrows to hit him. After this, the captain takes out a mysterious scroll. With it, he summons the servant of the god of death, which temporarily blocks the enemy's recovery abilities. Instead of running away, Reagan runs and attacks the captain. But he activates a protective barrier so he doesn't take damage. Reagan continues to hit the barrier. Soon its surface begins to crack and the player inside begins to get nervous. The hero is ready to destroy the defense when suddenly a meteorite falls from the sky, taking away 5 million health from him. It turns out that this is the leader of another guild, who decided to help Sin and share the reward for the murder. Player Emperor mocks Reagan that he will soon die without health restoration. But in response, the hero demonstrates several skills that gradually begin to increase health. After this, he breaks into the enemy army and continues to kill soldiers. Seeing what he had gotten himself into, the emperor ran away and ordered his men to retreat. Sin is left without support and soon without a protective dome over himself. Reagan finishes him off with one blow. Suddenly, the sky-rank boss Gale, the leader of another nearby city, bursts into the battle. Reagan sees that his strength and level are far superior to his own. So when Gale strikes, the hero simply disappears into thin air. When the dust clears over the battlefield, no one sees the Winter River nearby. One of the players recalls how Reagan can change her appearance and personality and asks everyone to be on guard. Suddenly, another player in familiar Leakoff clothes recalls that Reagan pretended to be a bald player. He suggests killing all the bald ones here because they could be the Winter River. Immediately, everyone picks up on the idea and starts hunting for bald players. At this time, the hero remains on the sidelines watching the chaos. However, he decides not to waste time but to take advantage of the confusion. He runs up to Gale, who suspects nothing, and steals a rare treasure map from him with a slap. Immediately after the strike, Reagan's disguise disappears thanks to Gale's skill. It activates a skill that allows it to deal a blow 1,000% stronger than normal. But when the hero strikes, the man simply dodges, putting his horse into his inventory. Left with no means of fighting, Reagan takes to his heels. Along the way, he summons his steed, and now none of the players can stop him. Having run far enough, Reagan takes out a treasure map. Since the treasure has a time limit, he decides not to delay. He soon reaches the White Star Ridge, where he encounters unfamiliar monsters along the way. Porcupines turn out to be much stronger than butterflies, although they are lower in level. Reagan doesn't wait and strikes first, but unfortunately, the monster partially transfers this damage to the guy himself. It turns out that even damage from skills is returned to him, but then he finishes off the porcupines, which gives him a new level in health restoration. An hour later, he finally reaches the place marked on the map. He doesn't have to dig for long, and soon he gets the Lucky Pearl. Such an artifact gives luck, which affects the quality of items, events, and attacks. But when you pick up the pearl in the box, you also discover another treasure map. However, he decides to do this tomorrow, and today he will just kill more wild animals. The next day, he arrives at Thunder Shadow Ridge. There he is met by an unusual electrically charged aura that reduces his health and strength. Walking a little further, he discovers the White Lightning Tiger, a boss of the spiritual level. Reagan decides he can try to capture such a beast with a rock and gallops forward. He uses March on the animal to immobilize it, but suddenly the tiger jumps away. In response, Reagan is struck by lightning, which however does not bother him too much. He continues to strike the tiger with his sword while the beast tries to fight back. At some point, the tiger even regains its health, but Reagan decides not to give up and uses grip, immobilizing the animal. After this, he continues to strike with his sword. Within a few minutes, the tiger finds himself with a quarter of his health. Then Reagan decides to catch him with a stone. But suddenly the stone breaks against the animal, and the system reports that capture is impossible. The hero decides to continue his attempts, which also fail. Unexpectedly, after all the rock attacks, Tiger evolves to the next stage. He becomes an Earth-rank Lightning Paradise Tiger. Reagan continues to try to catch him, but he runs out of stones, and the beast has become too dangerous. Soon the stones for catching run out, and the hero makes a last attempt to catch it. It is this attempt that proves successful, and the stone absorbs the Lightning Tiger. When a pet is trapped in a stone, it returns to its first level of development. To make him stronger, the guy calls him back. He decides to use the Pet Enhancement Stone on the tiger. After being strengthened, the tiger becomes a boss of the sky level and even grows wings for flight. Reagan decides to use another Pet Enhancement Stone. But unfortunately, the tiger cannot overcome the royal level, so the enhancement fails. After this, the system offers to turn the tiger into a racehorse, and the guy agrees. However, the pet turns out to be too weak for practice, so Reagan decides to use the donkey for a while longer. After this, he sets off again for the treasure and soon finds the right place. You have to dig much deeper than ever before. But in the end, he gets his reward, a Scroll of Blessing, which enhances second-level skills. Reagan decides that he needs to strengthen the dreaming skill that he stole from one of the demon gods. The skill evolves to Dream World, which allows you to create an illusion to deceive the enemy. Now the hero decides to take up the development of his pets and leaves the mountains. Until 4 in the morning, he kills porcupines along with the tiger. By this time, the animal has reached a mature stage and can already be used as a riding animal. Reagan decides to try it out and rides the tiger back to the city of the Fatal Rose. She is very unhappy to see him and orders him to leave. The hero stubbornly replies that he will leave only after the prediction. In response, the girl begins to cast a spell and attacks him. Suddenly, they both find themselves in some kind of cave. It turns out that she brought him here so that the local animal, a giant snake, could get rid of him. A dark Earth-ranked python looms menacingly towards them from the shadows. But unexpectedly for the Fatal Rose, Reagan is not afraid. but takes out a weapon and summons a tiger. Riding on it, he flies to attack the snake. With March, he takes away a significant chunk of the enemy's health, and then he starts chopping at him with super fast sword strikes. The python decides in an instant to release a poisonous mist. Unfortunately for him, Reagan proves immune to this attack and continues to punch the snake. Thanks to the tiger's wings, the hero successfully avoids an energy beam attack from the python. Reagan is confident that once he kills the snake, Fatal Rose's attitude towards him will change dramatically. With one blow, he kills the snake and its body falls next to the Fatal Rose. After this, he lands and asks her for a prediction again, but this time he promises a fair exchange of the prophecy for 3 favors. Reagan promises to restore her levels that she lost, to restore the losses from the deaths of her guild members. And he also promises to sell her some items, all of which are of high rank, so that she does not doubt him. He also swears to fulfill all the conditions of the God of Oaths. Fatal Rose agrees and activates her fortune teller skill. Having lost 10 levels while using the skill, she tells him that his target is in the Coldwind Mountains. Reagan then adds her to the team and begins to kill smaller snakes, automatically leveling her up. After some time, Fatal Rose gains a level higher than it had before. To compensate for the guild's losses, he allows them to choose items to purchase. The girl starts to be cunning and announces that she will buy all the items for 10,000. Reagan is furious because one of his items usually sells for hundreds of thousands at auction. But the Fatal Rose reminds him of the promise and the hero has no choice. Thirdly, the conversation turns to objects that fell from the body of a giant snake. And this time the girl says that she is ready to pay only 5,000 for them. Reagan smirks and advises her to think carefully and not regret it later, but she is confident of her impunity. Since all 3 conditions have been met, the hero suggests saying goodbye here. But unexpectedly, Fatal Rose offers to shake hands as a sign of reconciliation. The guy smiles and shakes her hand while using empty hands to steal an item from her inventory. The girl does not understand why he is so happy because she does not notice how objects continue to disappear one by one. Reagan even comes up with a way to keep her longer, deciding to teach her a farewell gesture from his region. All this time, he continues to steal items from her inventory. After this, Fatal Rose tears the scroll to teleport back. But suddenly, Reagan stops her with the grip skill to continue stealing. At this moment, the girl herself remembers the rumors and decides to check the inventory. She realizes with horror that she has been robbed, and the hero continues to take more items. In response, he offers her to buy these items, but at a nice price, because her guild will still need them. If last time she paid 15,000 gold coins, this time Reagan demands 250. The girl understands that this is robbery, but she also understands that she has no choice. Eventually, they make a deal and the girl asks not to bother her anymore. After this, Reagan decides that it is time to go in search of the gnomes. While he is riding the tiger, Teresi calls him and warns him that Charles will release the dragon in 3 days. This makes the hero hurry, and after a few hours, he reaches the Coldwind Mountains. Soon he stumbles upon unusual ruins right in the area of coordinates that the seer said. Looking around, he sees nothing that indicates life here. A block of stone attracts attention, behind which a passage may be hidden. To break it, Reagan uses the march. Suddenly, a gnome teleportation platform is discovered under the stone. The next moment, he is transported to a mysterious passage. As he goes further, he discovers more and more tunnels and passages and decides that it is a labyrinth. Meanwhile, the gnomes learn that someone has entered their labyrinth. They have been underground for so long that they still remember that there is a beautiful statue above the portal. But when they see that a common man has come to visit them, they decide that they should not be afraid of being discovered. Reagan, meanwhile, tired of wandering, decides to simply start breaking down walls in order to get out faster. One of the gnomes roars that the work of his many years of work is now being destroyed. The patriarch decides to let the stranger go further so that he can destroy their house. Immediately, Reagan is transported to a mysterious place from the labyrinth. He notices strange balls that start flying at him. Over time, the number of balls increases. Even in the air, he cannot escape from them. Instead of running away, he decides to start smashing them with his sword. Having destroyed all the balls, the system warns the hero that he will soon be transferred to another place. The next moment, he finds himself on a small island in the middle of the lake. His task will be to kill the birds that are on the shore of the lake, but crossing the lake by swimming or flying is prohibited. Suddenly, a bow appears in the hero's hand, an obvious hint of what they want from him. The shores of the lake are about 100 meters away from him, and he would not have been able to hit the birds from such a distance. But suddenly an idea comes to his mind when he sees creatures in the water. The gnomes are very surprised when he sits down and starts fishing. When a fish bites, Reagan tosses it into the air. He then jumps towards her and uses her as a springboard to cross the lake. The guy successfully crosses the lake and immediately sees those same birds in the branches. Now he can, without limitation, engage in their destruction in the old familiar way, with the help of a sword. When Reagan is transported to the gnomes' rooms after completing the task, he finds a brawl going on there. Two dwarves argue about each other's incompetence and stupidity. The guy tries to play peacemaker and asks them not to fight. In response to this, both gnomes are insulted, and the system warns that Reagan's reputation level among them is discussed. After this, the gnomes refuse to talk to him and demand that he get away. But their mood changes dramatically when Reagan takes out a piece of the obsidian crystal. When the hero says that he wants to give the ore to them, their attitude towards him suddenly changes to friendly. However, the gnomes turn out to be more disunited than it might seem. They begin to fight for the right to get the obsidian crystal, offering various services and gifts in exchange. Unexpectedly, the leader of the dwarves offers a piece of immortal rank ore and sword repair for obsidian. Reagan decides to accept this proposal. The chief promises that the preparation of weapons will take 2 days and 2 nights. He also asks his friend to join and share the experience of such an event. He then proceeds to evaluate the sword and discovers that it was made by heavenly powers. Thus, with the right ore, its sharpness can be increased from 30% to 100. After this, the dwarves go to the blacksmith to get down to business as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, updated equipment is delivered to Reagan's home. The immersion capsule turns out to be a better option than a helmet because it takes care of the player's body and psyche. Returning the next day, he finds the dwarves at work. In just 2 days, the dragon will be released, so the guy decides to start leveling up his character. While exploring the mountains, the cold soon begins to negatively affect him, taking away his health points. Also on the top of the mountain, he discovers local monsters, winter pigs. Reagan is already thinking about getting his sword to go and test the experiment, but he remembers that the gnomes have it. Despite this, he decides to fight with his bare hands. Within 10 minutes, the first pig was down, although it took longer than usual. The monster drops a staff, which the hero decides to use as a weapon until the sword is returned. Suddenly, he receives a call from Teresi, who shouts about a problem. It turns out that the dragon deep in the lake may be the dragon god. Also, the current dragon god that everyone knows may actually be a demon god. Reagan realizes the chaos this news will create and suggests they think about it later. After the conversation, he continues to kill pigs to increase his level. One of them even drops a sword for him. With the sword, things are already going better, and soon he reaches level 88. By this time, he had been gaining experience for 2 days already and decided that the sword should already be ready. He returns just in time as the dwarf chieftain prepares to deliver the final blow. As soon as the final hammer strike lands on the sword, a powerful stream of energy erupts from it. The force of the current is so strong that some people can't even stay on their feet. When all is quiet, the sword rises into the air. The dwarves have finished their work. One of the dwarves tells Reagan to soak the sword in his blood to activate it. He touches the sharp blade with his palm, and the sword begins to drink. The system announces that the weapon now belongs to the guy. Then at one point, it falls into the hero's hands, and he cannot help but be surprised at how big the weapon has become. When the magic begins to wear off, the sword becomes extremely heavy, making it impossible to hold straight. The gnome says that the ore affected the weapon in this way. Reagan decides to keep the sword in his inventory for now. He also opens the weapon description and discovers there a penalty to attack speed of 500%. The guy decides to ask the dwarves if they know how to make wielding such a sword easier. They answer that such a method exists, but it is kept secret from everyone. This topic causes Reagan to ask why the gnomes fled underground in the first place. It turns out that the Light faction, after their victory, began to exploit the dwarves, so they fled and hid underground. According to them, the same situation happened to the elves who escaped into a pocket universe thousands of years ago. Reagan decides to invite them to join the Dark faction since they are already against the Light faction. But the leader of the gnomes explains that they cannot leave here because of the shadow of their ancestor, although they have wanted to do so for a long time. The gnome must fight on his own, and to speed up the process, Reagan offers them his help from a distance. He explains that he is not only a swordsman, but also a monk, and therefore can heal and strengthen himself and others. He also offers them the feather of a fallen angel, which increases all characteristics. And also, since he himself cannot yet use the sword, he offers to borrow it from the dwarves. He had previously learned that they had a unique ability to lift weapons of any weight. That is why, as payment, he asks to teach him this skill. At first, they refuse because they consider it an unequal exchange. But in the end, the hero manages to convince them. They won't be able to remain neutral and join the Light faction, so it's better for them not to quarrel with the Dark faction. Since they agreed, he reveals to them that dragons will also be joining their faction. Eventually, the leader of the dwarves announces his decision to unite with the Dark faction. Everyone supports his idea and is already looking forward to the battle. Together, they come to the cathedral where the relics of their ancestors are kept. According to tradition, the leader of the gnomes undresses and asks Reagan for a weapon and a pen. Since the sword is too big for the dwarf, he turns it into a hammer. After this, he approaches the altar and calls upon the spirit of the ancestor with the help of the ball. The spirit of the gnome ancestor immediately appears and rejoices that his descendant has become so strong. The leader promises him that today will be the last battle and rushes into the attack, activating his wings with a feather. The gnomes begin to fight in the air as Reagan watches them. Then when a character needs healing, he immediately provides it. The hero interests the gnome ancestor, and he asks the guy to demonstrate his strength. With all of his power-ups activated, Reagan swings his arm to attack. The gnome recoils back, for such power is incomprehensible to him. Luckily, Reagan pulls back his attack in time to prevent the dungeon from collapsing. However, the spirit remains impressed by such power. For this, he rewards the hero with the skill Infinite Power. After this, the ghost asks Reagan to take care of the dwarven people instead of him in this place. Now all the gnomes can return to the surface, and the leader of the gnomes is in a hurry to thank Reagan. He gives him a pill that will allow him to control a new version of the sword. Reagan immediately takes the pill, and it also increases his attack power by 1,000. After this, the sword in his hand no longer seems so heavy. When the chieftain asks where they should go, the boy advises the city of the heart of the sea, where Cheryl is in charge. After this, all the gnomes gather in the square to go to the surface. Using a portal, they are transported to the mountain, where they say goodbye to Reagan. On the way to the lake, the hero receives a message from Terishi that in half an hour the dragon will break free. First of all, he flies to the city of the heart of the sea to ask the teacher to move to another region. Together they saddle up the Pegasus again and set off on their journey. In just 20 minutes, they fly up to the lake on the surface of which a seal glows. The cultists have gathered around and are casting spells to free the dragon. Reagan only has time to say hello to Charles when there is a powerful splash of water behind him. A fiery figure of a winged dragon emerges from the surface of the lake. Priests immediately appear next to the dragon to be the first to win the god over to their side. Reagan is not far behind and asks the dragon to consider joining the dark faction. The dragon god Dominic replies that it was because of the dark faction that he was imprisoned under the lake for all these millennia. Therefore, when the churchmen invite him to their place, he does not doubt at all. But Charles intervenes and asks his master to think before making such a choice. But when the dragon asks him to explain the reasons for this, the man cannot give any arguments. Then Reagan decides to step in and prove why. But in response, the dragon god only orders him to be silent and attacks. Suddenly, a huge shield blocks the attack right in front of the hero's nose. It turns out that two demon gods, Ralph and Atticus, arrived at the negotiating site. The dragon becomes enraged upon seeing his own and announces that the dragons will now join the light faction. Reagan feels that the appearance of the gods has only made things worse and decides to act. While the dragons are arguing, he tells Charles about his achievements, which exceed all the dragon's needs. The dragon god promises Atticus that one day he will take full revenge on him for the humiliation. After this, he asks his servant about the decision regarding choosing a side, but in response he simply soars into the air. Despite the obvious loss, Reagan receives no notification of the mission's failure. Meanwhile, the churchman and the dragon god walk away. After this, the hero does everything to point out to the gods their mistakes in conducting negotiations. However, he also tells us that not all is lost, because the task is not yet over. He asks the demonic gods to help protect the city, as well as to create all the conditions for him to talk to Charles. The gods agree. This begins the quest to protect the city. After this, leaving Terishi behind due to his dragon affiliation, they fly off to the city. By dawn, they arrive at the city of Cheryl. In the main square, they meet the gnomes that Reagan told them about earlier. The hero introduces them to each other and tells them that they all belong to the same faction. Cheryl is especially kind, allowing the gnomes to stay in the city for as long as they want. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by a sword that simply fell from the sky. An unknown person lands on top of the weapon, with all of his indicators hidden. Suddenly, he suggests that Reagan leave the place and his allegiance to the faction. The stranger assures that he came here for his own interests and asks not to associate himself with anyone. Offended by the insolence, Atticus rushes to attack him, but the stranger deftly avoids the blow. Reagan is surprised by the skills and apologizes, declining the offer. After this, the stranger flies away on the sword. Terishi hurries to warn his friend that many guilds will soon arrive to attack the city. He also gave Charles some coins so he would definitely come to the battle tomorrow. Reagan thanks his friend for his support. In the morning, a huge army is already approaching the city gates. Since the hero needs to meet Charles, Cheryl puts him in charge of protecting the city. Reagan will have to take part in the second wave of defense. Soon the system announces the start of the battle and the attackers rush to attack in a crowd. Meanwhile, the first wave of city defense runs out of the city. When two groups of fighters face off, Reagan can't help but notice how well they fight. Soon it's his turn to join the fight, and Cheryl wishes his student good luck. He kills the first boss from the light faction with just March. The rest also suffer from the attack. Many soldiers die.